Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Dragon. I'm Snappy, and thank you for joining me for our live stream today, Unbox and Explore, where we're going to be diving in to the Odyssean Tarot. So this is going to be a lot of fun. One of my dear, beautiful audience members anonymously sent me the Odyssean Tarot, and this is a really cool deck. Let me bring up my other camera here, so you can see kind of what we're looking at. Oops, wrong one. It's this one. So it comes from this independent tarot company, Welkin. And they sent also a postcard, which is pretty fun. Some beautiful art here, you know, really, really cool. But it came with this amazing book, The Odyssean Tarot by Christopher Leech, the tarot deck itself, and then this Delian Oracle. So I'm really excited to dig into this for you guys today. So we're going to have some fun looking at this beautiful deck. Before we dive in to that proper, I wanted also to show you guys here the Welkin store where you can pick up the Odyssean Tarot. If you look in the description, you'll find the link. And it's a pretty cool looking deck, some amazing art, and I'm really excited to explore it all with you. And they have a really good price little thing going on right now, a deal going on. You can get the Odyssean Tarot, the book, and the Delian Oracle, right? Deck book, $60 for Canadians. Not bad, not bad, right? So support independent creators, support independent artists. Go check out the Odyssean Tarot, especially after we dive in today. So let's take a look here. So I've already been exploring the book, and I'm really excited to dive into it with you. A really beautiful, magical perspective the creator Christopher Leech has. So let's actually begin by taking a look here a bit at the Odyssean Tarot book. And I want to read for you guys just the preface here from the book, so we can get a little knowledge. Because honestly, with most of the tarot decks that I deal with, right, that people send me or that I've purchased, most of them do not come with any decent literature at all, right? You'd be very lucky if you even get a book nowadays. Most of the time you get one of those terrible little scans, or you'll get a link, and it'll be some very, very, very generic stuff. But there's nothing generic about this. It's actually really well put together. So let's check out the preface here. So first off, it opens up with a beautiful Homeric proverb. Everything is impiety if nothing is allegory. Oh, I love that. That's deep, right? Right? If nothing is allegorical, then everything is impious. Love it, love it, love it. So the book, you can tell that it is from a more independent company. Artist's name is not on the front, right? The author, Christopher Leech. You know, it is pretty good quality. But it is an independent book, right? So it does have a bit of that kind of feel to it, right? So a tarot deck and companion key created by Chris Leech and edited by Michaeline Tremarchi. Okay, so let's check out the preface here. So it says, as a boy, I was drawn to many of the Greek myths for two basic reasons: their tales of heroic adventure and their inclination towards the fantastic and strange. This interest was fostered by films such as Jason and the Argonauts and Clash of the Titans. Later, as I grew into adulthood, there were films such as Pasolini's Medea, Cocteau's Orpheus, and the Coen brothers' O Brother, Where Art Thou? My interest in ancient Greek culture broadened apace to include the theater of Euripides and Aristophanes, along with various Hellenistic schools of philosophy, notably the pre-Socratic Heraclitus and Diogenes. And the thing that struck me most, and still does today, about these 2,000-some-year-old works is how modern they are. Starting in 2002, I was fortunate enough to live and travel throughout Greece for extended periods. I wandered the Peloponnese extensively, picking olives in Galatas, cramming into a Spartan taverna to witness the Greeks win the UEFA championship, and watching Athens scramble to prepare for the return of the Olympics in 2004. The location I stayed at most, my home base as it were, was the island of Hydra, made famous in the 60s as an enclave of international artists, but now little more than a novelty destination for middle class Athenians. During my time in Greece, the germ of the idea for a tarot deck based on Greek myths took root. Tarot and mythology naturally share several things in common, including divine and semi divine figures, noble quests and challenges, numeric symbolism, and the universal themes of power, love, tragedy, and transformation. Looked at on a more granular level, both utilize archetypal figures comprising the substrate of the collective unconscious as described by Jung. Both systems rely heavily on symbolism and allegory to explore not only the oddities of the physical world, but the everyday realities of the ethical, philosophical, and spiritual worlds of the metaphysical. And both Greek myth and tarot explore the consequences of hubris while stressing the importance of balance, self awareness, and adherence to a cosmic moral order. As with all my tarot decks, I endeavor to provide the reader with something familiar, something unexpected, something that animates, and something that does justice to the people, ideas, and cultures they treat. As complex and historied as both Greek myth and tarot are, I have tried to keep the Odyssean Tarot as simple and true, yet practical and accessible as possible. There is much more to be said about either the Greek myths or tarot than I can say, but in the words of Diogenes the Cynic, I threw my cup away when I saw a child drinking from his hands. Really, really beautiful, beautiful stuff. And we have a couple personal pictures here of the author back in the early 2000s and some of his places he stayed in Greece. Really, really, really cool. So now we're gonna pop this baby open and take a look at the Odyssean Tarot. All right, so let's take a look here. Oh, good. Just gonna give the plastic here a quick cut. All right. Now we can open this up. Okay. Well, first off, it's a really beautiful deck. Really beautiful box. Like incredible art on the front here, right? We got some nice title on the top here, right? Beautiful. The back, love it. Okay. Oh, wow. Ooh, the Ace of Wands. That's beautiful. Is that the Phoenix? Okay. Well, the backs are really incredible. Look at the dual heads there of the Nymphy. Wow, 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 wow. And fish in river waves. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, and the first card that we're seeing here, yeah, that must be the Phoenix as the Ace of Wands. Very, very pretty. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. So I'm going to take off the seal here. Beautiful. And it looks like just based on the side, they've divided all the colors, right? Look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. If we take a look, they have it all divided by the various colors. Oh, amazing. So to start, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the minor arcana and just take a look at all of the art. And then what we'll do is we'll read a little bit more of the book, and then we'll explore the major arcana. And we'll read each of the chapters of the major arcana and take a look thoroughly at each of the cards. So that'll be fun. That's good enough. We'll leave that over there. All right. So we'll start with the wands here. And first up, we have, let me just turn this around. I'll look at the book just so we can have a brief overview, but I won't read every single one of the minor arcana. Yeah, the borders are really pretty, right? They have that classic spiral imagery, very, very classically Greek. And oh man, the paintings are incredible. I wonder about the artist or if it's AI or, beautiful, beautiful stuff. So we're going to take a look here. And we'll start off with the suit of flame, And yeah, of course, this is chaos, the phoenix, beget from noble roots, the Delphic Maxim. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So our first card. Wow, wow, wow. Chaos. All right. So the Two of Wands. Oh, beautiful. Some incredible geometry there. Absolutely love it. What do they say here for the Two of Wands? The two, they use flame in this particular deck. They call it flames. But classically, of course, it would be the wands. So the Two of Flames is Theseus. Theseus, of course, in the labyrinth. And the Delphic maxim is the way out is the way in. Ooh, King Theseus, right? Wild, wild stuff. Well, he becomes King Theseus by the end, but he was the son of Aegeus, right? Wild stuff. The one who slays the Minotaur. Okay, so three. The Three of Flames. So for the Three of Flames here, it says Jason. Jason. Now that is a really interesting choice and one that I would not necessarily choose, right? The Three of Flames would be virtue in the classical tarot, which I usually associate with Hecate trivia. And they put Jason here. I don't really consider Jason to be too virtuous a character by any stretch of the means. Oh, wow. What do they have to say? It says, Delphic Maxim, know your opportunity. Okay. Interesting. The story of Jason and his Argonauts is one of the most popular adventure stories of all time, especially with young boys. As with many future heroes, when Jason was a young boy, he was removed from his home at the royal palace for his safety and raised by the wise Chiron. Yeah, Chiron, of course, is the great centaur, and his name means hand. He teaches many of the great heroes, such as, excuse me, Heracles and Asclepius. His wicked uncle Pelias had usurped the Thessalonian throne, and when Jason came of age, he returned to reclaim his kingdom. Coming to a river, Jason offered to carry an old woman across to the other side. As he carried the crone across, she grew heavier and heavier, and it turned out she was Hera herself. Barely making it across, Jason lost a sandal, fulfilling a prophecy that haunted his uncle Pelias. Beware a young man with one sandal. Pelias promised to release Jason's mother, Alcimede, if he fetched the golden fleece. Consulting an oracle, Jason was told accomplishing the task would also rescue the land from the famine that had ravaged it for years. Jason assembled the most outstanding group of heroes ever seen in Argos, the city sacred to Hera, and set out to retrieve the golden fleece. The first stop was Lemnos, an island where the women had slain all the men for some unspeakable offense. Jason and his crew were welcomed into the beds of the Lemnian women, who were eager for children. Jason had his work cut out for him, convincing his crew to leave the island. Reluctant, Argonauts sailed to the island of Deliones, where the welcoming king Cyzicus greeted them. After the Argonauts had rested and been given provisions by the king, they continued their journey. That night, a strange wind blew them back to the island. The Doliones, believing that they were pirates, attacked the Argonauts, who slayed the attackers, including King Cyzicus. Only as the morning light dawned did Jason and his crew comprehend their grievous error. Next, the Argonauts encountered Phineus, a half-starved, blind man gifted with prophecy. The gods were punishing Phineus by having whatever food he found immediately stolen or defiled by harpies. Vicious, chthonic creatures, half woman and half bird. In exchange for freeing him of his torment, Phineus told Jason how to traverse the Symplegades, two huge clashing rocks, metaphorically representing the Bosporus and the Hellespont. Eventually, arriving at Colchis, at the far end of the Black Sea, Jason was welcomed by King Aeetes, who immediately agreed to hand over the golden fleece. All Jason had to do was yoke two fire-breathing bulls, plow a rocky field with them, and then sow the newly turned area with the magical serpent's teeth. This Jason did, and from the sown serpent's teeth sprang a group of bloodthirsty soldiers, like Cadmus. Jason threw a stone in their midst, and the dull-witted soldiers slew each other. None of this could have been accomplished if it hadn't been for King Aeetes' daughter Medea, who fell in love with Jason at first sight. When King Aeetes reneged on his promise, Medea helped Jason steal the golden fleece and flee Colchis. In return, Jason promised to love Medea forever. En route home, Jason encountered several friends and foes seen in other heroic tales, including the sirens, Circe, and the hero Orpheus himself. As the Argonauts approached Crete, they were attacked by Talos, the towering bronze robot created by Daedalus to protect Europa from the Argo. Medea called up the Caries, female death spirits that drove Talos mad. The robot's lifeblood ran through his body in one vein, and in mental anguish, Talos removed a pin in his heel, thereby exsanguinating himself in a matter of seconds. When the Argonauts returned home to Thessaly, King Pelias killed Jason's mother and refused to abdicate as promised. The sorceress Medea tricked Pelias' daughter into killing their father, and Jason assumed the throne. Breaking his promise to Medea, Jason married the princess of Thebes. Incandescent with rage, Medea sent a magic robe to Jason's new bride, which, when she put it on, burst into flames. When her father, King Creon, rushed to help her, he too burst into flames. Medea then killed her two sons by Jason and fled to Athens in a chariot drawn by serpents across the sky. A broken man, Jason wandered aimlessly through Greece, lonely, disgraced, and unhappy. Lying one day in the shadow of his famous ship, the Argo, its rotting hull crumbled and crushed Jason to death. Wow. So we are given the standard Euripides version, right? Where Jason dies alone and forgotten as the Argo crushes him. In some versions of this story, though, Medea kills him, right? He's burned to death in her fires. In some versions of this story, Medea doesn't kill her children. They are killed by the Corinthians, so the tale is a lot more correct, but that was a good retelling. But I'm still confused as to the Three of Wands. Okay. The story of Jason is one of great promise and many broken promises. Blessed at the outset by Hera, the goddess of marriage and fidelity, Jason stepped forward to assume his rightful place, save his mother, and prove himself to the world. The sandal he loses, carrying Hera, is suggestive of Oedipus' damaged foot, and indicates that Jason, slightly off balance, may find himself wrong-footed. Many of the tropes of the hero appear in the Jason story: the threatened royal son who is raised in rural seclusion, the seemingly impossible tasks to save the people and prove himself, and the sage advice of a wise old man. Other tropes have simply been shoehorned in, such as the sewn serpent's teeth of the Theseus myth, characters met episodically as in the Odyssey, a weakness in a warrior's heel akin to Achilles, and the incendiary robe of the Heracles myth. Perhaps more so than any other hero myth of Greece, Jason's myth is fraught with betrayal and a disappointing lack of character from its protagonist. Jason's actions grow increasingly unheroic as the myth progresses, to the point where his becomes a cautionary tale. Psychologically speaking, as a boy's tale, the story of Jason is one of the transition from boyhood and the domain of the mother to manhood. In the realm of the interpersonal relationship, a man who has not developed an independent identity apart from his anima often finds himself dominated by a woman guided by a powerful animus. The sphere of female influence and its inherent power is felt throughout Jason's adventure: his mother's peril, the temptations of the Lemnian women, the Harpy's cruelty, Medea's dark abilities, the defeat of Europa's guardian, the wicked father murdered by his daughters, and the lure of material gain through marriage. Jason falls short of his promise, not so much by relying too heavily on the female, but when the time comes, by not stepping up and fulfilling his side of the deal. Instead of accomplishing tasks on his own or in a fair exchange with Medea, Jason allows her to do the dirty work and then quietly defaults on his obligations. As an anima figure, Medea repeatedly uses the magic of the unconscious to defeat Jason's foes. Jason repays her with conscious betrayal after taking credit and benefiting from Medea's feats. As a result, Medea kills his bride and children and escapes with the help of the gods. And as outward, so within, Jason's anima turns her back on Jason and takes with her all contact with the unconscious. Therefore, Thereafter, his lonely ego withers like the worm-eaten Argo, finally crushing him body and soul. In the end, the one real trouble with the young man with one sandal is he never managed to stand on his own 2 feet. Oh, interesting. Interesting. So they're using Jason as a cautionary tale about the need for virtue. The need for virtue. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I can fully see it, right? The reason why Jason fails is because his unwillingness to stand on his own 2 feet, his exploitation of Medea, and his inability to repay his side of the bargain. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Let's keep going. Okay. So the Four of Wands, look at that. Beautiful art, right? Amazing. We got him right there. So the fourth, of course, is the marriage of Cadmus and Harmonia. Praise harmony, right? Beautiful. This is great. You know, they give you for each of the cards an exploration of the myth, you know, a Delphic maxim, and then they give you some psychological meanings. So for the Five of Flame, we have the Caledonian boar hunt featuring Atalanta, right? Atalanta of equal weight, the great Athenian queen who slays the boar, at least in one version of the story. In all versions, she's given credit for slaying the boar. And then the men freak the F out. Why should she get credit? Why should she get credit for killing the boar? Right? And they all try to go after her. Beautiful stuff, though. Right? Love it. Let's continue. So, for Six of Flames, right, which would be victory in the classic tarot, they have the Trojan War. That's an interesting one because you know the Six of Wands is the coming into one's true will, the being in true fulfillment. I don't understand the Trojan War here. Okay. What do they have to say about the meaning? Okay. Exercise prudence is the Delphic maxim, so do the hard work. I mean, prudence is already a card in the tarot, right? Eight of discs, Eight of Pentacles. Interesting. So let's see. So what it says here for the Six of Wands, the meaning. The complex and composite myths surrounding the Trojan War, from the judgment of Paris to the rape of Helen, are metaphorical and diversionary. Considering the Greek expansionism that informs the real history of the Trojan War, the divine squabbles and interpersonal heroics of the various myths can seem little more than propaganda. Well, the Iliad does depict the strength of the bond of friendship between brothers in arms. It nevertheless stands as an unwavering indictment of male hubris, right? Achilles is full of hubris, right? This truth cannot be obscured by attempts to redirect blame for the Trojans' wars horrors onto the female deities Athena, Hera, or Aphrodite. That said, the defeat of Troy is a defeat of love, represented by Aphrodite, as well as a defeat of wisdom, as represented by Athena. In the end, one is not above another when both are lying dead on the battlefield. As Priam says, only the gods are blessed and free. As with a young man's eagerness for heroics and outward conquest, it can only work in the short run, specifically in the first half of life. Later, as a man must meet the consequences of such a life and otherness he ignored, derided, or intentionally mistook, such self-congratulatory delusions of accomplishment and stature can only act to intensify one's error. Although Alexander the Great took a copy of the Iliad along with him as he conquered the world, this epic poem, like the Six of Flame card itself, signifies the limitations and so the beginning of the end of the age of heroes. As with all fiction, the reality of Greece's war with Troy was much different than depicted in Homer's Iliad. Having grown restless domestically, Mycenaean Greece looked further afield for conquest. The sacking of Troy was the result, along with sorties on Egypt during the same decade as the Trojan War. Along with the death and destruction, They spread abroad. Greece itself suffered the loss of many of its city-state kings, inducing a crisis of lineage in those small kingdoms and the wholesale collapse of the Mycenaean city-state rule in Greece. Rather than a great victory for Greece, Troy's defeat actually was the tipping point of a widespread collapse of a Bronze Age civilization. Indeed, Greece's so-called victory is itself a Trojan horse, a hollow trick of vanity. Aside from its poetry, what makes the Iliad timeless is its critique of war. There is no refuge from fate. It cannot be assuaged with battlefield glory, wrestled into submission, or duped by Greeks bearing gifts. Force is not admirable, and once unleashed cannot be suborned by a mortal or a god. And finally, the poor, the unfortunate, the enemy is not the other, it is you. Wow. So victory, but coming into the reality of victory, breaking free of the illusion of fantasy, being confronted with the truth. Whoa, whoa, whoa. How intense is that? That's a really beautiful way to talk about the six. True will, indeed, but also that true perspective, clarity of vision, the reality of victory. Is it a victory even? Holy crap. I love it, love it, love it. This is proving to be quite the deep deck. A very great understanding of mythology. Let's continue. So, for the Seven of Flames, we have Perseus. Perseus. Use what you have, right? The Seven of Flames in the classical tarot would be, what is that? Oh my God, it's going to bug me. Valor. Valor. Right? Perseus is kind of a valorous character. He does abandon, you know, he does abandon Ariadne on that island. She gets saved by Dionysus, but that's beside. You know, the male still fails the feminine. Let's see what they have to say here. Right? We know the general myths of Perseus, but what do they have to tell us about the meaning? Just as the self transcends the limits of control-driven ego, the hero transcends the limitations of physical ability. Similarly, heroes are often outsiders cast out from their rightful home and raised by animals, chthonic creatures, or strangers. A hero may have a handicap such as a lame leg, inexperience, or overconfidence, or a malicious person in their life. Still, through their virtue, they succeed, as seen not only in Perseus, but in the Danae and Andromeda as well. As an outsider, the hero can see society more objectively and as a result often acts as a reformer or founder of a new dispensation. Oh, interesting. Right? So they're seeing Perseus as this figure, right? Who is this bringer of virtue. Oh, or bringer of, yeah, of valor. Powerful stuff. All right. Comes into that focus. He pursues from that outside in. Wild stuff. All right, so we're coming now to the Eight of Flames, right? The Eight of Wands. Oh my God, guys. Sorry about that. I accidentally dropped my mouse there and everyone freaked out. Okay, so, this is a really pretty card here, right? The Eight of Wands. So the Eight of Wands, right, in the classical tarot, or Eight of Flames here, would be swiftness, the magic of Hermes. So what do they say here? The Delphic maxim is act quickly. And they have Pegasus. Oh, that's perfect. That makes sense. Pegasus makes sense, right? The partner of Bellerophon, right? Who comes out of the death of Medusa, out of the blood, right? Unparalleled, swift. You know, the speed and power of Pegasus is unmatched unless they get spooked and you get kicked from the horse and die like Bellerophon, right? Hubris is the only thing that can destroy you with such power, right? Ignorance. And this energy is all about, right, recognizing the signs and following your will. But if you are caught up in your own ego, if you can't see outside of yourself, then you cannot recognize that beautiful gift, right? That Pegasus before you. That's beautiful. All right. So now we got the Nine of Wands. Strength. Heracles. Well, that's perfect for strength, right? And Heracles is that complicated hero character, but the most powerful of the hero characters in the ancient myths, right? They certainly are themselves, and they certainly are pursuing their will, right? And the 9 is all about that empowered strength of character, rising to the height of your passion, being in yourself and pursuing your desire, right? That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, for the 10. So the 10, right, is oppression in the classical tarot, the breaking free of the chains of oppression. And for the 10 of flames, we have Sisyphus, right? Sisyphus, classical story again of hubris, the poor king who's cursed to spend eternity in Tartarus, where he is forced to push that boulder up the hill for eternity, just to watch it fall down again each time he completes his task, right? Oof, oof. But ultimately, I always see the 10 of Wands as an empowering card because it's the breaking free of the chains of oppression. It's the recognition of one's own, right? Wildness, Interesting. I want to hear what they have to say. So for the meaning, it says Sisyphus's problems all began with the fault the ancient Greeks disliked the most: hubris. He was not content with what he had, wanted more, and didn't care what he had to do to get it. He acted as though time would never catch up with him, with the result that when it did, Sisyphus was damned to a burden so unbearable it's impossible even to imagine. Excess, exhaustion, and abject absurdity is how the suit of flame ends. It burns out. Ooh, showing that absolute absurdity, right? Where that intensity of the passion can take you, you know? Interesting. Being crushed under the wheel, right? How? Wow. I always like to view this card, though, as the breaking free of the chains of oppression, the coming to the end of that cycle, right? There's always that shadow to both of these cards. I fully agree with his surface level interpretation, but there's that other side too, right? Where it is the recognition of one's true self, the breaking free of the chains. To understand this card of oppression is to come out of that oppression, to recognize that we've been driven by our passions and that we've fallen into such absurdity. Oh, interesting though. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. So let's keep going. All right, so the 11th, Mortal of Flame. So I guess for the princes, they're going to call them the Mortals of Flame. Interesting. Delphic maxim, tell when you know. And we have Asclepius, right? Asclepius with the serpent staff. Interesting. Interesting. The princes are complex characters, you know. Um the Prince of Fire I usually regard as kind of the radical idealist. They're these, to me, I think of someone like Jim Morrison when I think of the Prince of Fire. Interesting. Interesting. I wouldn't necessarily put Asclepius here. What do they say for the meaning? Do they give a meaning? The Greek word Asclepius shares the same root as our word scalpel and sculptor. Asclepius had many children, right? Okay. Interesting. Or is it the princess? Is Asclepius the princess? I think she may be the princess, actually. They're not telling me directly what it means here. Let me look at the front of the book. Did they tell you exactly how they're ordering this? Okay, how to read. The traditional, okay. Okay, so the portal, the mortal is the page, is the princess. Sorry. So that's my bad. Actually, guys, this is not the prince. That makes more sense. Asclepius is the Princess of Wands. Yeah, Princess of Wands. Okay, right. You know, when you're dealing with so many different tarot decks, people number them all differently, right? So, but yeah, that makes much more sense. It's the Earth of Fire, Mortal of Flame, the Page, the Princess. Interesting. So then the Prince will be the next one, the Daimon of Flame. And this is the Minotaur. That makes more sense having the Minotaur as the prince, right? The prince is definitely a bull-headed figure. Now that's beautiful. I like that. That's beautiful. And Asclepius, right? They do have that infinite potential, that true creative spark. You know, I can see them as a Princess of Wands energy for sure. Love it. Love it. Man, the art is just so beautiful in this deck too. All right, let's see. What do they got for the Queen? Queen of Wands. Usually I would put that as like a Circe. Oh, Hippolyta. Hippolyta makes sense. Queen of the Amazons. She's got that fiery passion for sure, for sure, right? Hmm. Interesting. Interesting, interesting. What do we got next? Who do we have as the King of Flames? Aries. Makes sense. Deity of Flames, Aries. You know, usually I see Aries as that emperor energy, but that also has to do a lot with the astrological correspondence. You can equally put the emperor Zeus. I can see the King of Wands being Aries for sure. The fire of fire, all that fiery passion, right? Yeah, that's how they classically do it, Astro, but you know, not always. I was just looking through which deck was I just reading the other day where they don't do it that way. Yeah, like in the Thoth, the princesses are the seven, for example, right? And the other court cards are all fours, right? Yeah, how you order them gets it's different depending on the system. In the classical Rider Waite though, which is yeah, princess, prince, queen, and king, but not always. Ooh, deity of flames. Okay, so that's it for the fire. So now we're going to come into the cups, right? Which is the waves, the suit of the waves here. So the first one, the ace of waves, we got Aphrodite. Aphrodite. Oh, interesting, right? Of course, the goddess of love, born when Kronos is or Uranus, when Kronos castrates Uranus and the blood rain falls down and she comes out of the foam of the waters, right? She's definitely the queen of the nymphy. Beautiful, beautiful. And you know, the ace of cups always signifies new relationships, new love coming in. So that works. That's beautiful. All right. So let's see. The two of wave. We got Eros and Psyche. Well, that's beautiful, right? That's the alchemical process, right? Eros and Psyche is classic. Psyche is the Virgo. Eros is the divine partner, the highest muse. And Psyche goes through the trials and tribulations to rise to the stars to meet her. And that's definitely summed up in this card, right? I always see this card as Bacchus and adoration of Venus, the power of profound joy, the recognizing of the other, and the coming into intimacy and embrace. Certainly can see all of that implied with Eros and Psyche. Beautiful. All right. Okay, for the three. Three of waves. We got the three graces, right? The charities. Beautiful, beautiful stuff, right? And yeah, amazing. Many different charities depending on which versions we're looking at, you know. But yeah, all beautiful. What do they say? The three graces, sometimes called the charities, form part of Aphrodite's retinue. Although they are usually found in groups of three, their names and associations vary. Kale, beauty; Dominia, earth mother; Oxia, spring growth; Cleta, renowned; Pytho, persuasion; Paragor, Paragoros, consolation; Phaena, bright; Pasithea, hallucination; Eudaimonia, happiness; Euthymia, good cheer, Eutychia, good luck, Paideia, play, and of course, Charis, the most famous grace, right? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The three graces. Love it. All right. That makes perfect sense to me for the Three of Cups, right? Loving abundance. What is more abundant than the graces, right? And that Three of Cups is all about coming into friendship and intimacy and connection. So really beautiful. Into the power of joy. Four of Cups, right? Which would traditionally be, your luxury card, your family card. Four of Waves, they got Narcissus and Echo. Oh, that's interesting. Narcissus, the son of the moon, right? The one who falls in love with his own image and then hears the echo behind. A lot of powerful ideas about the magic of pothos and the recognizing of the muse and the seeing oneself reflected in the other. Often this myth gets twisted. Narcissus is not narcissistic, which is wild, right? An echo we understand is Tacita, is that great silent muse, a lot of powerful stuff. So let's read what they got to say here. I'm interested to what they want to, how this author implies this. Chris Leech. So he says, for the meaning, aside from the daffodil, Narcissus has given his name to narcissism. This personality trait ranges from a reasonably normal impulse toward selfishness to a near psychopathic personality disorder characterized by an excessive need for attention, an inability to empathize with others, and delusions of grandeur. To the Greeks, the core transgression of Narcissus was hubris, an outrage to the natural order. Always the issue is hubris, and always the issue is the breaking of Themis, right? In religious terms, hubris meant a transgression against the gods. In legal terms, hubris indicated assault or sexual crimes. Yep. In psychological terms, hubris is a manifestation of the ego inflation. Echo's inability to speak for herself suggests a lack of self-confidence and a compulsive people pleaser. The implication is that when we lack the ability to be and express ourselves, we cannot properly love. The same is true when we have such an aggrandized notion of ourselves that all we can see or care about is ourselves. For these people, everything they look at becomes projection, mirroring feelings and thoughts that ironically they are often blind to, right? This is the great tragedy, though, of Narcissus and Echo. Narcissus falls in love with his own image, right? But really, he's falling in love with her voice, and she can't actually speak. You know, she can only be seen and perceived through him, through his own self-knowing, right? Interesting. The curse of Narcissus is not only excessive self-love, but the obsessive love of appreciation, of apperception. Echo's curse is to seek love through expression, but go unheard and misunderstood. Both curses closely resemble psychological complexes, especially those often experienced by artists and visionaries. See a certain way, the eye is a wound through which the soul sees and resounds. In Jung's observation, the gods have become diseases. Can be seen the codependence between pathology and mythology, the divine process at work in the human soul. An artist's fixation may be seen by the outside world as vanity or insanity, and yet this is precisely the reflective relationship necessary to the soul searching and soul making, that is imagination. The Four of Wave then echoes the interaction between the artist, their audience, and their art. But looked at more intently, it reveals the interrelationship between pathology and the soul, both of which have a vested interest in fixating on the wound. Oh, interesting, right? The four, right, represents always the limitations of that love. It's on one way, right, that love of luxury, the four, is that foundational energy that can be the plateau, but it can also be that settling for something less, never expanding beyond the moment. Oh, that's really deep. That's really deep. So putting Narcissus here in Echo, that's kind of wild to have them in that energy of the luxury. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow, this is really, really deeply thought out. I'm really impressed so far with this deck. All right, we got the five of waves, right? Disappointment, disappointment. But here we have Demeter, right? That makes sense. Demeter has to go through that profound magic of sorrow in order to call the dead back to life, in order to call the child to come, right? Live without sorrow is the Delphic maxim. Beautiful, right? Interesting. A lot of beautiful stuff there. Let's keep going though. So we got now the Six of Cups, which is, of course, loving reciprocity, pleasure. And they have Ganymede and Ganymede, right? Or you could see Ganymede and Hebe, right? Same thing. Ganymede is just another name. Um, these are the cupbearers, the eternal virgin youth, that perfected ideal beauty and pleasure and love. Makes perfect sense to have them. Makes perfect sense to have them there, right? That's beautiful. Okay. So the Seven of Cups. Oof. One of my favorite cards, debauchery. Debauchery. Oh, Proteus. Oh, that's interesting. Delphic maxim, be far-sighted. Right? Proteus is a prophetic god of the ocean, right? Son of what is, oh yeah, I just read here. Son of Poseidon, yeah. The old man of the sea, right? His specific quality is changeability. Interesting, interesting. What do they got for the meaning? Understanding the present is hard enough, but trying to get a handle on events as they will unfold in the future is nearly impossible. There are so many variables. No sooner is one grasped than it slips through the fingers. One must hold fast to their aim and write out the myriad changes to truly see the consequences of their actions, regardless of how uncanny or improbable. In this way, Proteus is akin to Morpheus, the dream maker who reshapes the world in sleep, and whose dream images in turn reshape the world. The name Proteus means the first man, and this etymology seems unlikely and confusing until one realizes that Proteus is, in the words of Jung, the personification of our unconscious. Before the ego can think or will, the unconscious is there, feeling and perceiving. Its understanding transcends the conscious mind. It twists and turns to evade capture by the ego for the ego's own selfish ends. But if we entreat it persistently enough, break the seal, it will offer up its knowledge and insight to us. After all, the first man emerged from the ocean, as did all the animals of the earth. To know where we're going, we must know where we're from. The 12 animals Proteus turned in and out of for Aristaeus represents the fullness of what we are. In each of us, for instance, exists the attributes of all 12 star signs, of all 12 hours of the sun. To see the outside world accurately, we must first accurately see ourselves. And to see ourselves accurately, we must see ourselves in full. Oh, interesting. Right. Hmm. They have a far more positive interpretation of the Seven of Cups than I generally do. Right? I usually see the Seven of Cups as we're moving out of that balanced energy of loving reciprocity and we're coming into this selfish energy. We're coming into this energy of self-aggrandizement, of self-fulfillment, and of limited forms of pleasure, where we're distracting ourselves, where we're not in that harmonious flow, where we're in this more self-serving nature, you know? And I guess we could see that in the unconscious, right? The unconscious ultimately represents more of that animalistic, more of that, true instinctual nature that we have to bring into flow and in consideration, you know? But with that same energy comes all this imagination and vision and this play into the future, right? But also we get all that confusion, fantasy, illusion, and anxiety, right? And when I read the seven, it's all about anxiety. But interesting energy, interesting energy. Wow. Okay. I like it. I like it. I like it. Okay. The Eight of Waves, Orpheus and Eurydice. So the Eight of Cups, indolence, right? Perfect energy here. Perfect energy, Orpheus and Eurydice. Why? Because what the Eight of the Cups is that energy of wanting love, of wanting and inviting love in, but then being unable to reciprocate it, right? Being unable to reciprocate it, being in that fearful, anxious energy, not being able to come into true harmony. And what is the essence of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth? It's that Orpheus, again, he's in his hubris, as we see constantly in these Greek myths, and he's in himself. He decides to resurrect her for his own selfish purposes. He breaks the natural law and the natural order, right? She was meant to die and go through a cycle of rebirth. And instead, he takes that from her and tries to assert her as his possession. And he's asked one thing of Hades, Aidoneus. Aidoneus says, trust her. Don't look back. Believe that she will come out with you, and she will. And what can he not do? What can he not do but trust her fully? He doubts her and looks back and then curses her, right? Oof, 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 oof. Definitely Eight of Cups energy, right? They were never able to fully be in the true loving intimacy because of the hubris and ego of Orpheus, right? He objectifies her, he doubts her. He tries to save her when she doesn't need to be saved. He's breaking the laws of nature for his own selfish aggrandizement, right? Eight of Cups energy for sure. Wow. I love it. Okay. So next up, we got the Nine, right? The Nine of Cups, happiness, right? The water in its most abundant. Oh, Pan. Love it. Pan. Now, Pan is perfect energy for this because Pan symbolizes all that pleasure, all that passion, all that frivolity, but also there is that dark shadow to it. And the nines always have that kind of dark shadow in the minor arcana because they represent the excess, right? And that excess can easily turn on you. Oh, wow. So, on one hand, Pan is that loving frivolity, he is the festival, but also he can easily turn into that abuser, right? That pure pleasure seeking force, that destructive force of the all. Wow, 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 wow. That's a beautiful one. Love it. Okay. All right. So now we come to the 10, right? And the 10, of course, is fulfillment, the completion of the cycle. And we have the Garden of the Hesperides, right? Where the golden apples are, right? That beautiful community where we are provided for and fulfilled. The equivalent of the Garden of Eden, what the Garden of Eden is ripping off, if we're being honest. So, beautiful stuff, right? You go to the garden to give birth to the child where you're protected. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love it. That makes perfect sense. Okay. So we got the princess now, the page, the 11, mortal of wave, Pygmalion. Right. Pygmalion. Pygmalion who fell in love with his statue, with his artistic creation, right? He refused to love another and then was cursed by Aphrodite to love his art again, falling into more hubris. Right? And the mortal of wave, right? The page of waves would be the earth of water. This in some ways makes sense. The Princess of Cups is the child in her most innocent. It's the most innocent energy in the entire deck. I often make this energy akin to Medea, but Medea at the beginning of the cycle, right? Medea, who is in that naivety, who thinks that she's going out to save the pirate Jason and then is cursed and abducted, right? Wild, wild stuff. Pygmalion, though, makes sense here because we have that innocence and that, the children energies, the prince and the page and the princess, right? These energies struggle with their elements. They struggle to come into full intimacy and connection. They need to grow still, right? But they also represent all of this empowered potential, infinite potential, right? Let's continue. So next up, we got the Prince of Cups, the daimon of waves, which they have as the Furies. Oh, the Furies. We love the Furies, right? Furies, wild, powerful energy, you know, related to Hecate and related to DK. Powerful, powerful stuff here. Um, Trying to see it as the prince. Yeah, I can kind of see it. I can kind of see it, I guess, but not really. I don't know. This one is one I'm not fully get. Um, right. The whole idea of the Furies, right? In I always think of the Furies from the Oresteia, where they become the calmed ones, the Eumenides, and they become calmed by being made part of the community by Athena, who takes their violence and helps them to integrate. I mean, I guess the Furies do represent that childlike rage in the Oresteia, that tit for tat blood feud mentality that is childish and limited. But when I think of the Prince of Cups, I think of someone who's struggling with the water, struggling to find their connection to other people, struggling to find their place in relation, and going about it in all the wrong way. They're seeking answers for the water in the air. That doesn't make sense. The water can only be answered by engaging in that connection. You have to be in intimacy and in community. You can't just think about this stuff. You'll never figure it out. And the prince is struggling to find their place and to find themselves fulfilled intimately, and all they're doing is thinking about it, stressing themselves out. No, you need to go pursue love, either through the fire or through the water, through both, right? I don't know. Interesting. All right, let's see. Who do we got here for the queen? Oh, Circe is the queen of waves. That's an interesting one to me. When I think of Circe, I didn't fully agree with Hippolyta either as the Queen of Wands. I guess she is kind of hot-headed, but I would always see Circe as the Queen of Wands. Because to me, the Queen of Wands is that beautiful artist who puts herself on display. It represents that glamour magic, right? Whereas the Queen of Cups is the loving, nurturing mother energy, right? The one who is the shoulder to cry on, who is your emotional support, who finds herself fulfilled in service. Circe is not fulfilled in service. Circe is turning men into pigs, right? I think she's the Queen of Wands, in my opinion, right? She's exposing shit. Um, hmm. Interesting. Okay, well, what do they got for the king? Oh, Poseidon. Well, that makes sense. The fire of water would be Poseidon, that roaring, thunderous wave, the master of horses and of earthquakes, right? The ruler of the waters, the Zeus of the realm of the ocean. Wild, wild stuff. Makes perfect sense. Beautiful. All right. Well, with that, now we're coming up to the earth, or sorry, the air, sorry, which in this one is the suit of winds. The suit of winds. Oh, interesting. So for the ace of winds, we have parthenogenesis, long for wisdom. Parthenogenesis, right? And we see Athena being born out of the mind of Zeus, right? For she is Zeus's corrupted mind refined through the power of good counsel, his twin sister Metis. Wild stuff there. Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Born from Zeus's head, Athena is cognate with Logos and the Word. Envious of the female ability to bear children, the male Zeus makes the brain his womb. On a historical political level, this myth epitomizes the movement to replace the mother goddess by shoehorning in a pre-existent male figure, the father. Zeus's well-known philandering is another version of this usurpation of local goddess worship by the arch male Olympian. Coexistent with the appropriation of female power by the male is the introduction of a mindset that pits sexuality against spirituality. Under male authority, these previously intertwined qualities become antithetical. Female sexuality, with its receptivity, vulnerability, and emotional content, is especially singled out for scorn. What results is sublimation and division. Male from female, me from you, God from matter, good from evil. Life, thus cut and dried, becomes discriminate, quantifiable, controllable, and thereby a simple matter of logic and willpower. Oh, wow. Interesting, right? Athena is a weaver. She builds up methodically, protects and warms with clothing, rugs, and tapestries. She takes an almost imperceptible thread and constructs the big picture. She is at her best as the embodiment of art, psychopoetic rather than psychological. She is the wisdom and bravery to face not just the world, but one's inner self. If she sets her mind to it, she can think beyond thought, and in so doing, become the soul made manifest. When Tiresias was struck blind, Athena compensated him with the gift of second sight, soul sight. Athena gives soul to art and spirit to action, right? Spirit to action. Perfect, perfect, right? The Ace of Wands is the beginning of a new perspective, right? The change in the pursuit of wisdom. Change of mind in the pursuit of wisdom. Perfect for Athena. All right. The Two of Swords classically would be peace. And here we have Helen of Troy. Well, that's an interesting choice for peace. Okay. What do we got here? Shun what belongs to others. Okay. What do we got for the meaning? At the core of the judgment of Paris is vanity, particularly the special form of vanity ascribed to women and acted out by the goddesses. The suggestion is that vanity is a particularly female failing, especially when it comes to their physical appearance, and as a result, men suffer unduly. This is clearly a male confection, since not only are men the hapless victims, but a woman's physical appearance is primarily what most men are attracted by and concerned with in a mate. This is corroborated when Paris sides with Aphrodite, whose offer is the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen. On top of this misogyny is added the suggestion that women cheat, since Aphrodite promises Helen to Paris when she is already married to King Menelaus, thereby violating the fealty of the marriage bed, which is Hera's central purview. The fact that Zeus, the god most concerned with correct behavior, continually violated this fealty corroborates the assertion that the judgment of Paris is a male invention. Similarly, the story of Helen argues the fault of the bloody decade-long war for Troy, which resulted in the collapse not only of that city, but all of mainland Greece lies squarely on women for their vanity, deviousness, and irresistible allure. This, of course, is a pack of lies, specifically designed to exculpate the actual perpetrators of the catastrophe that was the Trojan War. The vainglorious, the bloodthirsty, and the plain old greedy. What then of Helen? How did she feel about being abducted? Cited as the cause of countless deaths and scapegoated. No testament, no Iliad or Odyssey of her position exists. And so, as Lacan would say, Helen n'existe pas. Helen doesn't exist. She is voiceless. Her voice is taken from her. She has been reduced to nothing but an object, right? And we see this in the story, right? Oh, he gets to it. Oh, I love this guy. Okay. In some tellings, the idea that Helen does not exist is reified by having her safely sequestered in Egypt, while a ghostly double of her made by Zeus, who is Paris absconds with to Troy. This goes some way to explain why she haunts Troy like a revenant and the Iliad like a cipher. But then scapegoats and symbols never have a voice of their own. As far as symbols go, the Trojan War was not a war to retrieve the most beautiful woman in the world, but rather to defeat the goddess of beauty and love, Aphrodite. She won the contest of the goddesses, and it is her competition that then wage a proxy war against her. At long last, it can be said that Hera wins back her divine purview, the honor due to the marriage vow, while Athena too achieves her goal, the spiteful removal of her personal aegis, the palladium from Troy, and its subsequent transplantation to Rome. There the glory of divine might is right, lost to the Greeks and in the Trojan War, will take root and flourish in the succeeding Roman Empire. Wow. It is said that Paris was killed by an arrow to the groin, as a wound to the groin is almost always a euphemism for impotence. This begs the question, why does a man with an underactive libido choose love over wisdom and earthly gain? Did he believe his shortcomings in this area would be cured by the world's most beautiful woman? Paris is so weak and dispassionate a character that questions of love never really entered the discussion of the rape of Helen. What remains for those who fight to the death for her is the simple issue of material possession, spurious honor, and a paucity of wisdom. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Wow. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Intense, right? The lesson to be learned from Helen is peace, right? Don't try to usurp and possess the feminine. Wage war. Wow, wow, wow. Blame. Oh, man, that's wild. Okay. Oh, we're getting into some wildness here, guys. Look who we got. How beautiful. We've got Medea herself. 3 of wind, 3 of swords, right? Which would be sorrow. Sorrow. Delphic maxim, do not be overcome with self-pity. Well, we all know the story of Medea, but why is she the 3 of swords? Sorrow, misunderstanding, and miscommunication, right? And that coming in to true understanding, right? That 3 has that goddess energy that overcomes that struggle. We move from the Saturnian into the Libra, right? So let's see. The recurring male interpretation of the Medea story is one of warning about what happens when a woman gets too powerful and the deep, dark, irrational treachery of woman writ large. As with many figures in Greek mythology whose story is so involved and varied, Medea and the meaning she contains cannot be easily summed up or dismissed. She is resourceful and resilient, duplicitous and deadly, yet she is also vulnerable. She suffers emotionally and psychologically. She gives up her homeland to elope with Jason, who then betrays her, loses her place in Athens, and finally returns to the land of her birth to face the father she betrayed. While it could be argued that Medea suffers from chronic bad luck, her skill with magic clearly shows that she was shown favor by the gods. The chariot Helios sends her to escape the ire of Jason and all of Corinth, together with her incredible reservoir of strength, argues that Medea truly had the status of a goddess. On the surface, Medea's story concerns the trials of a strong, independent woman, but on a deeper level, it concerns male lineage and patriarchal inheritance. This is shown first via the squabbling brothers Aeson versus Pelias and Aeetes versus Perses, and then in the sons of Jason's line, Medea's versus Glauces, Aegeus' sons, Metis versus Theseus. Unlike most female figures in Greek mythology, Medea is intelligent, audacious, and capable of violent actions customarily reserved for men. As a woman who is proactive and an agent of her own destiny, she has become a symbol of freedom, empowerment, and liberation. She is the colonized who turns the table on the colonizer. Medea's story is also about betrayal. First, there is Medea's betrayal of her father, but not before he betrays Jason by trying to have him killed and reneging on his promise. Then there's Medea's betrayal of Pelias, but not before he betrays Aeson and Jason, trying to have the later killed and reneging on his promise. There is Medea's betrayal of Jason, but not before he betrayed her with Glauce. Less ambiguous betrayals exist, such as Medea's betrayal of her brother, but even there, Absyrtus attempted to kill Medea first, not as an eye for an eye, but for stealing an object. Whether Medea actually killed 2 of her children is undecided, with many claiming this was a later invention by those who hated and feared Medea. Whatever the case, this is one of the most startling aspects of the myth and what most people remember about Medea. Although filicide was committed by other figures in Greek mythology, including Kronos, Agamemnon, or Orcamus, Tantalus, and Heracles, Medea's story is also about giving too much, sacrificing too much of yourself and the things that make you who you are for high ideals such as love, justice, and loyalty. Psychologically, Medea's series of struggles with her father and brother, with her husband Jason, with her status in Athens, and finally full circle with her father back home in Colchis, is the struggle of the divided self, specifically the struggle between the superego and the id. The arbiter of such a struggle is the ego. Although Medea follows her passion against tradition, society, and accepted gender roles, she does so with logic and a belief in fairness. After she has killed her brother, for instance, she insists on stopping at Aiaia to receive forgiveness for Jason and herself from Circe, her aunt. This shows that Medea believes in legitimacy of the proper standards and principles of civilized humanity. While Medea's trust in right conduct is sometimes affirmed, as with her father's forgiveness, others repeatedly do not hold up their end of the bargain. This is one of the crucial aspects of the Three of Wind card, learning from mistakes the hard way, how to stay true in a world of falsehoods. And is truth even possible, let alone desirable, in such a world? Wow. Well, he makes a very good, compelling argument for Medea, right? Man, is truth even possible? Do we fight for what we believe in? Can we come to some clarity of understanding? Is that ever possible? Whoa, 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 whoa. Intense. But those are the swords for you. Okay, so next up, we're going to check out here. We got the Four of Swords, right? Which is classically truce, repose. So here we have the golden bow. Use time sparingly, right? The golden bow. Right? This is all about Aeneas going to the underworld, right? With the help of the Sibyl of Cumae. I'm not going to read the full myth there, but it has it has the classic elements of the Greek heroic story, right? The katabasis and the Nikia, right? Really, really powerful. So what do we see here? What did they tell us? It says the Four of Wind can signify any setback, psychological, emotional, or physical. The lame Anchises suffers the ultimate setback, death, but given the option to return to the upper world, he chooses to remain in tranquil Elysium. Aeneas suffered the setbacks of losing the Trojan War, being compelled to abandon his paramour Dido, roaming the Mediterranean in search of home, and losing his father. At a point where he doubted his mission and his own people wished to give up the pursuit, Aeneas took a step backwards to weigh his options and pray for guidance. Like a dark night of the soul, his trip to the underworld showed Aeneas which direction to take. Had Aeneas refused his destiny, the myriad of souls preparing to be reincarnated in the world would have faced the significant setback of never being reborn. Wow. So what do we see? The Four of Swords is truce, right? It's coming to deeper understanding through listening and communication, through constructing a holistic perspective, right? Through forming a greater understanding of that which exists outside of the self. And that's what we see Aeneas doing when he suffers all these setbacks, when he is wandering alone and aimless. He recognizes that he needs to go into himself, to go into that deep underworld of the subconscious, and to truly confront his inner world. And that's where he gains the wisdom through listening to the spirits, through the muse, right? Wow, wow, wow. And he's able to form that greater understanding. Beautiful. I love it. That makes perfect sense. Okay. All right. We got the Five of Swords, the Five of Wind, right? Which is defeat, defeat. Really intense card, the Five of Swords, right? This is the energy that takes us into the Six of Swords, science, wisdom, reason, and one of the more intense struggles in the tarot. And here we have it represented by Arachne, right? And Arachne, right, her father is the dyer of the purple, and she's the one who makes the weave, who manufactures the wool, right? What do we see here? The most well-known version of the myth was written by the poet Ovid in the book Metamorphoses, right? Ovid was an incredibly popular writer during his lifetime, but was banished by the Emperor Augustus for some unspecified offense in his poetry. Arachne then acts as a representative of the poet himself, with Ovid's verses metamorphosized into Arachne's masterful tapestry. Just as Arachne was punished by Athena for her truth-telling, so Ovid was exiled to the Black Sea for being more honest than Augustus, was prepared to accept. Wow. So it's that struggle to come into truth and wisdom, right? On one hand, the Five of Swords is complicated energy, the defeat. Because on one hand, it represents that we need this energy. It's this energy and the struggle of this energy that calls us into understanding. But this is always a struggle, and there's always a loss. And right, we experience this in that pursuit of wisdom in general. In order to come into true understanding, you have to fail, you have to make the mistakes, you have to struggle to write the essay and explain yourself. But first, you have to be misunderstood, right? And that's what we see here. But we come into ever greater refinement with that Arachne energy. This is beautiful because on one hand, she does represent that truth telling that fails, but she also represents that beauty of the weave and the coming into greater clarity and understanding, right? So there's both potentials here. That's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Wow, I'm really enjoying this. Really enjoying this deck. Okay, so now we've got Six of Swords, Six of Wind, Science, Reason. And they have Penelope. Oh, Odysseus's wife, right? The ever faithful. The Queen of Ithaca, right? Mother of Telemachus, right? So let's see what they got to say for the meaning here. Through cunning, Penelope is able to stave off her persistent suitors for 2 decades. Through emotional fortitude, she steels herself against their harassment and the growing disdain of her son Telemachus. Through an intuitive flash of inspiration, Penelope devises a task only Odysseus could accomplish, thereby eliminating the suitor's prospects and revealing her husband's identity in one fell swoop. Wow. That is really perfect, right? How wise is she? She saved herself for 20 years, rises above and beyond all of everyone's disdain, and is able to save and prove her husband and protect herself in one single blow. Oh, that's beautiful. Great. Okay. So now we got the Seven of Swords, futility. Futility, right? And here they have the Seven of Winds, the Judgment of Paris. The Judgment of Paris, right? Paris, that egotistical bastard, that impotent rapist who abducts Helen, right? In order to fulfill the hubris of Aphrodite. Oof. Oof. But that makes perfect sense for the seven, The Seven of Swords, we're in that selfish, aggrandizing kind of energy, right? There's also that futility that we believe we can't, and there's certainly that understanding of futility with Paris, right? He believes he cannot have love. He's shot in the crotch, so he cannot actually fulfill his love, right? So there's all that wildness there. Interesting. That makes sense. Okay, so we're going to come up now to the Eight of Swords. Eight of Winds, Cassandra, right? Oh, man. The Eight of Swords, right? This is depression. Oof, oof, oof. Heavy energy. And Cassandra certainly fits this role, right? Who's Cassandra? She's the Trojan who is blessed with the gift of prophecy from Apollo, but then denies Apollo the right to sleep with her. So what does Apollo do? He spits in her mouth and curses her. He gives her the gift of prophecy to know the future, but promises that no one will ever believe her. No one will ever believe her. So she is reduced to screaming. They lock her in the tower, and she cries and screams herself raw as her country burns. Oof. Oof, 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 oof. Definitely representative of that Eight of Swords energy. Okay. The Nine of Swords, cruelty. Right? And who do we got here? Pandora. Oof, right? After Zeus steals the fire and gives it to humanity, which is one aspect of the divine feminine, right? The way they use the language, that fire is Hestia, right? Brought down to earth and put in the hearth. But because they take that energy, Zeus then gives us the other half of that fire, which is Pandora. Pandora. For every savior, there is a vampire, Medea and Circe energy again, right? Weirdness going on in that tale for sure. But Pandora, right? She represents the feminine in its most destructive, and it's a curse of Zeus in order to hold humanity back, right? Prometheus is a wild character too, especially when we consider um, Cassandra and the Alexandra. One of the cool poems that everyone should check out is Lycofron's Alexandra. So Alexandra is actually a changing of the name of Cassandra. She becomes Alexandra, she who stands against the men, who rebukes the men for their rape and their violence. And in that play, she's empowered, right? And it's a total different scenario. All of a sudden now that feminine energy is out to seek its vengeance and to bring about justice, decay, and empowerment, you know? And really wild stuff, right? But in that story, what ends up happening is we see all these wild weirdness with Prometheus. Prometheus gets freed by Heracles, remember, at the insistence of Zeus. But why? Because he hears the prophecy of Themis, that Themis is going to give birth to, Themis hears a prophecy that Tethys will give birth to a child through Zeus that will then overthrow him, become the next ruler of Olympus, as we saw with Kronos and as we saw with Uranos. Zeus doesn't want the succession to happen. He constantly does everything to prevent succession. So how does he stop this, right? He has Thetis abducted by Peleus, right? And he gets them married, and he gifts Peleus at the marriage the Solomonic weapons, right? There's some really wild stuff there in order to control and dominate that feminine power, you know? There's a splitting of the feminine and there's a dominating of it, you know? Wow, wild stuff. But yeah, anyway, Pandora, though, represents that chaotic strife aspect of the feminine. But that strife energy in one aspect is always decay. It's always the justice too. There's always a lot of, a lot of this patriarchal insanity here. Let's see what our author here, Chris, has to say. Okay. Meaning, beauty, intelligence, personality. These were things Greek men feared in a woman. Pandora's name in Greek means the all-giving. Made from the earth, she is the earth, the giver of all gifts. Originally, Pandora was a matriarchal earth goddess who Zeus and the patriarchy turned into the cause of all things evil. The idea that men existed before woman and all was good is partial in both senses of the word, limited in scope and biased in the extreme. Unlike Eve, Pandora is not the mother of humanity, but rather of the race of women, women being seen as almost a different species than men. After the abrupt end of the golden age, men must labor to fill women's bellies with no mention of their own, or the fact that bellies bring forth life. Similarly, women's feelings, work, and worries remain invisible to men. Pandora embodies the anguish of the human condition. The ancient Greeks blamed Pandora for the human condition when she was just another of its victims, while it was the gods, specifically the vengeful Zeus, who was responsible for man's misery. Ironically, by holding Pandora responsible, the ancient Greeks denied Pandora her humanity, and by extension, the humanity of all women. This myth then can be seen as justification for the behavior of Greek men in keeping women malnourished, uneducated, and confined to the house, unable to own property, and more. And this misogynistic tyranny is the real anguish of the card. Wow. Pandora was given a jar, the Greek word for which is pithos. This is near Greek word for the chthonic. This is near the Greek word for the chthonic serpent at the center of the world, Python. In Greek myth, serpents are affiliated with female energy. And just as there is a connection between Eve and the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the use of box instead of jar in English occurred in the 16th century, but its friendly cognate with the slang term for female genitalia fits as if intended with Eve. evil, the serpent Pandora, and the introduction of sex to human relations. The myth is not entirely bleak since humanity is left with the quality of hope. That said, the question has long been asked, is hope a comfort or the quality that keeps humanity making the same mistake but hoping for a different outcome? The answer is it's a little of both. Without hope, we would have died long ago. Whether that's a good or a bad thing remains an open question. Holy shit. This guy's getting wild on us. That's some intense stuff there. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. All right. Well, that's certainly cruelty. Certainly cruelty. Cruelty on full display. So let's continue here. We come now to the Ten of Swords. The Ten of Swords. Ruin. Ruin. Okay. So what do we got for ruin here? Achilles. Of course, Achilles. Pelasgic Typhon himself, right? The ultimate bearer of hubris, right? The ultimate warrior, the one given all the blessings and still fails. Right? And remember, I was telling you that story about the prophecy of Thetis, right? Thetis was supposed to have a child with Zeus that would overthrow Zeus, but instead she has a child with Peleus. Who is that child but Achilles? Achilles, who was meant to be a god but is now a man and has to be trapped out of time and out of place, right? So let's see what the meaning says here. Achilles is one of the angriest men in Greek mythology, the Iliad declaring in its opening pages to be dedicated to his wrath. His death occurs after the events depicted in the Iliad and marks the movement from heroic to the tragedies and comedies of Euripides, Aristophanes, and like by way of Sappho in the lyric poets. Achilles was not bound by oath to fight for Helen. He was given the choice between dying in battle or living a long life in obscurity, and he chose the former, preferring the immortality of glory over life itself. When Odysseus meets Achilles in Hades, where the great hero has been made king of fallen soldiers, he laments that he would rather spend his life as a wretched serf in the land of the living than be lord of all the lifeless dead. At the extreme end of the male and martial Greek mind, softness was ignoble, weak, female. Sexual relations with men were a tradition within the ranks of the military and part of the social structure of such male-centric city-states as Sparta. To such minds, penetration was active, masterly, hard, whereas to be penetrated was passive, wanton, and fatal. Soft in the worst possible way. This is how the body of Hector is described after it was descended upon by Achilles' myrmidons, dragged around behind a chariot, and had any kind of violation done to it by the bloodthirsty Greeks. There is a certain irony here, given Achilles' famous live-in lover Patroclus, the hero's softness for the boy in the vulnerable spot given to him by his mother, which he always carried with him. To become a killing machine such as Achilles, one must steel oneself, and in so doing, close oneself off from their humanity, becoming in essence a thing. Similarly, by killing, one turns a living, breathing miracle of nature into merely a thing. That made the life form unique, meaningful, and miraculous is forever removed and made nothing. Long before the Gospels warned that those who take up the sword shall perish with it, the Iliad had already made it clear. Ares is just. He kills those who will kill. The Greeks had a great fear of hubris, and Achilles embodies hubris. In psychological terms, hubris is ego inflated, insolent, irreverent. It is born of satiety. Being too well off, it believes itself invulnerable to deficit. Spurning the weak and helpless, hubris is the sin of the strong and proud, and before a fall comes pride. Achilles' hubris did not cause the Trojan War, but it did prolong it, causing far more casualties than would otherwise have been the case. The love of an adoring mother can generate a sense of invulnerability and a resolute self-confidence in one's ability and fate. As empowering as this can be, to become whole and truly powerful, One cannot be given wholeness and true power from without, but must find and grow it within themselves. This was the secret of Achilles' heel, which the warrior perceived as an illness, thereby keeping him ill and preventing him from truly healing, that is, becoming whole. His sulky withdrawal, so typical of a spoiled mama's boy, was born of Achilles' inability to accept the objective authority of others. And yet, the inclination to halt hostilities was a good one, albeit stemming from misguided self important intention. But then Achilles was a man upside down. Not much changed from Achilles, the baby dipped headfirst in the river Styx. When he finally stopped killing, it was out of spite. And when he went on a killing rampage again, it was because of his love for another. Wow. Wild stuff there, man. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, Achilles. What a tragic character. What a tragic character. Okay. So who do we have for the princess, the page, the mortal of Win? 11. Okay. Alexander the Great, right? Child of Amun, incarnation of Dionysus. Wild. Oh, interesting. And definitely someone who represents that wild prince energy, right? Out to living in their full imagination, completely removed from reality, and out to conquer everyone. They hate the world, they hate themselves. Wild. Oof. Definitely. Well, all that potential, right? All that potential. So who do we got for the 12, the daimon? So for the 12, the heir of air, we got the Cyclopes, the Cyclops, right? Polyphemus, and the Cyclops, right? Someone who can't truly see, right? Can't see with reason clarity, bound in their own limited perspective. Wow. Okay. Who do we have for the air? Queen of the air. Antigone. Oh, one of my favorite characters in all of Greek philosophy, in all of Greek mythology, sorry. Antigone, of course, is most famous in Sophocles as Antigone. She is the great empowered woman who, after what's his name? Creus. Well, they're going to tell us here, right? Antigone was the daughter of Oedipus and Jocasta. Her sister was Ismene, and her brothers were Polynices and Autocles. After her father's great humiliation and self-blinding, Antigone accompanied Oedipus as he roamed Greece as an outcast. Antigone remained attentive and faithful to her father, and the two eventually found solace at a refuge for suppliants sacred to the humanities. Meanwhile, back in Thebes, Jocasta's brother Creon was acting regent, but a battle over who was rightful king was raging between the brothers Polynices and Autocles. Hoping her father could decide the debate, Ismene traveled to her father, but she arrived just in time to witness his death. Theseus, the king of nearby Athens, allowed the sisters to bury their father in his city, after which they both returned to Thebes. There they found Autocles defending the city from his brother Polynices, who was joined by 6 chieftains in a siege that Aeschylus made famous in his play The Seven Against Thebes. During the extended battle, where the 7, including Polynices, attacked the city's 7 gates, many men were lost, including Creon's son, Menœtius. Neither the besiegers nor the besieged could attain an advantage, so the proposal was made that Polynices and Autocles should face one another in hand-to-hand combat to decide the victor. When the 2 brothers killed each other simultaneously, the fighting was renewed. Finally, Thebes won, and Creon, now king, gave Autocles a hero's burial, but decreed that Polynices should be left for the beasts and buzzards to devour. When Ismene and Antigone heard this, they were shocked. Proper burial of the dead was a sacred duty, lest the souls of the dead be forced to roam the afterlife in desolation without a home. We are women, Ismene told her sister. We must obey the law. Antigone responded, do as you must. I go to bury the brother I loved. The penalty is death. You are not strong enough, Ismene cried. As much strength as I have, Antigone replied, I will expend doing what is right until my dying breath. Outside, a thick dust storm began to blow, which Antigone used as cover to give Polynices his proper burial. When the dust had settled, Antigone was arrested and brought before Creon. You knew my edict, but chose to transgress the law, the king said. Your law, not the justice that is decreed by the gods. The laws of Olympus are not transitory and made by men, but divine for all time. At this, Ismene arrived weeping, declaring that she had helped her sister by burying her brother. Antigone would have none of it, stating that Ismene had no share in the deed, telling her sister, your choice was to live, so live. Mine was to uphold what was right, and so to die. King Creon then sentenced Antigone to be buried alive the next day. That evening, as he contemplated his decision, the seer Tiresias visited Creon and warned him that should he proceed with the death of Antigone, a devastating plague would befall Thebes. The next morning, Creon himself went to Antigone's cell to pardon her, only to find that she had hung herself sometime during the night. Creon's remaining son, Haman, is in love with Antigone, and when he hears of her death and his father's involvement, he too commits suicide with a knife. When his mother, Queen Henioke, is informed that her last remaining son is dead, she too kills herself with poison while cursing her husband's name. With this, King Creon, the hard-faced politician, sees his line ended and lives out the remainder of his days in lonely misery. In this way, Sophocles' play Antigone foregrounds the dreadful cost masculine qualities such as control, discipline, and the absolute letter of the law can exact when imposed on the expense of the feminine qualities of love, family, and the spirit of communal law. Wow, right? Themis, right? What we see in this play is we see two, Themis is the natural law of the universe. She's the mother of decay, justice. But justice in the play, there are two justices that we see, right? The chorus actually explicitly tells us there's the justice that sits with Zeus, that sits with Creon, the law of the king and of the land that can be enforced. And then there is the natural law, the chthonic decay, that essence of Themis herself that cannot be broken, that cannot be assuaged. And this is a constant theme that we see the hubris type male figures constantly try to do. What do they want to do? They want to do two things always: stop time and reject Themis, right? They don't want to be bound by the natural laws and the cycles. They don't want to die. They don't want to share. They don't want to have to respect, right? They want to reject Themis. And they want to stop time so that they can live perpetually in their own empowered reality. This is what we see with Kronos, right? This is what we see with Zeus. Wild stuff. Wild stuff. Wow. All right. So let's see. We're now coming into the King of the Wind. Who do we got as the King of the Wind, the deity of the wind of the swords? Kronos. Oh, man. With the baby. You got to put him with the baby. Oh, Kronos is beyond powerful, right? Kronos is beyond powerful. And there's clearly some wild satire going on with Kronos, and there's a transformation that happens with Kronos. The earlier form of Kronos, right, is that bigendered energy, right? We see this explicitly, for example, in the PGM. And then Kronos is castrated, split in two, right? Split in two. And that force becomes imprisoned in Tartarus, and Zeus takes over, gains the scepter, right? But let's see here, what does Chris have to tell us about Kronos here? We generally know the myth of Kronos. What do they got for the... There's always this kind of womb envy stuff going on with all this, right? Let's read. It says, the Delphic maxim is good for this. Fear ruling. right? The air of fire, fear ruling. The story of Kronos begins with his father Uranos, the ruler of the universe, defenseless without guile and acting as an element acts. Uranos, the sky god, married his mother Gaia, the earth goddess, and coupled with her constantly. Yet he hated the children she bore him, fearing they would disrupt his power. Uranos buried his children in Tartarus, the deepest, darkest region of Gaia. Filled with the pain of her children going abused and neglected, Gaia instructed her son Kronos to carry out her revenge. Furnishing him with a sickle made from her hardest and densest rock, Gaia hid Kronos and waited for Uranos to appear. When Uranos arrived to have his way with Gaia, Kronos attacked him, castrated him with the sickle, and threw his testicles into the sea. Marrying his sister Rhea, Kronos then took possession of his father's throne. His reign became known as the Golden Age, an ideal time without morality because everyone always did the right thing and death was unknown. Unlike his father, Kronos governed through determination, spurred on by the exhilaration of power. Through his own example, however, he recognized the fragility of his position, fearing that he would be overthrown by his children, just as his father had been overthrown by him. His solution was simple: eat each of his children soon after they were born. When the sixth child, Zeus, came along, Rhea was so fed up with her husband's behavior, she sought out the guidance of the Earth Mother Gaia. After all, Rhea's plight closely paralleled Gaia's with Uranos. When it came time for Kronos to devour Zeus, Rhea handed him a stone in swaddling clothes, which he immediately swallowed, just as Gaia advised. Zeus, meanwhile, was secretly nursed by a goat, Almathea, in the foothills of Ida on Crete. He grew quickly, and when the time came, Metis, the goddess of wisdom and Zeus's first lover, slipped Kronos an anemic, causing him to disgorge Zeus's siblings, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia. A cosmic war ensued as the Titanomachy, wherein Kronos and his siblings, the Titans, were defeated by Zeus and his siblings, the Olympians. In most accounts, Kronos was imprisoned in Tartarus when his brothers and sisters who fought alongside him against his children. In some versions, Kronos was castrated by his son Zeus, just as he had castrated his father. The similarity of the two stories and their shared castration fears suggests womb envy or a male power-based resentment based on the fact that it is females, not males, who give birth, create life, and have a unique bond with their child, and know with total certainty when a child is theirs. In each successive generation, the supreme male god gets closer to mimicking reproduction, ultimately culminating in Zeus's ingestion of Metis, followed by the gestation and paturation of Athena, right? The masculine is trying to usurp the feminine, trying to completely dismiss her, come into that empowered monism. Wow, wow, wow. Wildness. All right. Now we're going to come into the stone, into the earth, the discs. And for the ace of discs, we have Io. Io. Wow. Io, who makes love to the bull, right? Driven mad by the gadfly. Wow. Wild birth and opportunity. I can see that, right? The cow is usually a symbol for wealth and abundance. Makes sense. All right. What do we got for the second one? The two of discs, right? Change. The fickleness of the earth. Oh, they got the Castor and Pollux, the Dioscores. Do not be fickle in friendship, right? The twin half brothers, one whose father is Zeus and one whose father was Tyndarus, right? Their mother is Leda, who gets raped by Zeus as the swan, right? Wild, wild energy. You know, symbolically, the twins represent the duality of existence, such as the balance between the material world and the world of the spirit. Here, Castor and Pollux represent the human and divine working together for the common good, right? This constant cycle of change represented by the twins, one of the earth, one of the sky. Powerful stuff. I can see it. Definitely works. So the three of discs work in collaboration. Work in collaboration. Three of discs, three of stone, Daedalus. Do what you mean to do, right? Daedalus, the most famous of inventors, right? Who makes the bull, who builds the wings for what's the name? Anyway, he invents all kinds of stuff. What do we see here? They tell us here. He invents carpentry, glue. For the navy of King Minos, he invented masts and sails. Also for Minos, he designed both the Minotaur's labyrinth and Ariadne's dancing floor. He also devised the wooden cow for Pasiphae, right? Wow. Collaboration and work makes sense to have Daedalus. So the Four of Discs, one of the most complicated cards in the Minor Arcana, right? Four discs is the foundation, power, the building of one's true empowered self, the coming together of all of the elemental dignities into that solidity of the earth, right? Intense energy. What do we got here for the four? Midas, King Midas. Well, coming into that materiality and building the self. The simple moral of the story, which many of us know from childhood, is beware the pitfalls of greed. Midas was born a prince that even the ants gave tidings to. As a king, he was rich far beyond the measure of any man in his city-state of Phrygia, and indeed richer than most men in Greece. Yet he still desired more, and that desire caused him to lose everything. The most important thing in Midas's life was his daughter, and through his avarice, he killed her. The philosopher Aristotle claimed that Midas could not reverse the curse and died alone of starvation and misery. But even if he could reverse the curse, Midas could not bring back his only child. The suit of stone is the suit of wealth and the suit of family. And this card underscores the suit of stone's central lesson that family itself is wealth, and material wealth is valuable only insofar as it benefits the family. Oh, so there's that shadow side, right? Constructing the self is about building that cohesive sense of you within community, within family, within our true empowered place. Oh, interesting. Love it. All right. So now we come to the Five of Discs. Five of Discs. So let's see here. Five of Discs, right? Trying to remember, what is Five of Discs? Worry, I believe. No, it's yeah, it is worry. It's worry. So Five of Discs, Niobe, right? The daughter of Tantalus and Dione. For his transgressions, Tantalus was made to stand waist high in water, which receded when he went to drink it, while over his head hung fruit, above which he was never able to reach. Above him hovers a massive stone which forever threatens to drop. Niobe's husband was Amphion, who played a golden lyre gifted to him by his sometimes lover Hermes. Amphion's twin brother was Zethus, king of Thebes, who was married to Adon. Niobe had 14 children, 7 males and 7 females, known as the Niobids. Adon had only one son, and she became consumed with envy over Niobe's massive progeny. One night, overcome with jealousy, she crept into the bedchamber of the Niobids and slit the throat of Niobe's eldest son. The next day, when she discovered she had accidentally killed her own son, Adon was so distraught that the gods took pity and turned her into a nightingale. As deplorable as Adon's act surely was, the grudge she held against her sister-in-law is somewhat understandable, given that Niobe constantly boasted about her 14 children. Niobe taunted Leto for having only 2 children, and she had 7 times that many, an insolence that deeply angered the goddess. It was on a feast day dedicated to Leto that Niobe stood before the people of Thebes and declared, "How foolish you are, citizens of Thebes, to worship a woman you've never seen over me, who stands before you, daughter of Tantalus, who dined with gods, wife of Amphion, whose family presides over the city, and whose paternal inheritance is all of Phrygia." At this, Artemis and Apollo, always quick to defend their mother's honor, appeared before the crowd. Artemis killed all of Niobe's daughters, while Apollo killed all of Niobe's sons. Amphion witnessed the massacre of his children, grabbed a knife, and fell on it. Devastated, Niobe ran from the city. For years, she wandered in misery from Boeotia to Phrygia, sometimes speaking to her dead children, over times wailing in anguish at their loss. Finally, she arrived at the foot of Mount Cyplus, where the gods, weary of her lamentations, turned her to stone. To this day, she exists as a stone outcropping known as the Weeping Rock, the outline of which resembles a woman's face. When rainwater seeps through its porous limestone, it looks like Niobe is crying. Wow. More hubris being punished, right? More hubris being punished. But, it makes sense for the Five of Discs, which is all about worry over material possessions, worry about progeny, worry about coming into wealth, struggling to provide, trying to be in that empowered success. All right. So let's see. Next, we've got the Six of Stone, the Six of Discs, right? Which is success. So let's see here. Baucis and Philemon. Delphic maxim, help those in need. Growing bored with Olympus, Zeus and Hermes decided one day to see how the other half lived, slumming it for a lark. The gods dressed as beggars and wandered around a small village in Phrygia, asking what townspeople they met for a place to stay the night. To their dismay, everyone rejected them. Homeowners bolted their doors and spoke in harsh terms to the gods, which amused Hermes and angered Zeus. Finally, on the outskirts of town, the wandering vagabonds came upon the humble cottage of Philemon and Bacchus. The aging couple ushered the strangers in and plied their guests with food and wine without a second thought. After a time, Philemon noticed that although she had filled Hermes' cup many times, the wine pitcher she obtained the libation from remained full. Baucis realized that his guest must be gods and ran to the yard to fetch his prize goose to roast for the strangers. The goose ran past Bacchus and jumped into Zeus's lap, seeking protection. Zeus declared that no feast of roast goose was needed, and instead, Philemon and her husband Bacchus should leave everything behind and climb the nearest hill. The elderly couple did, never daring to look back until they reached the summit. When they turned to survey their village, they saw that Zeus and Hermes had flooded it, destroying everything except their humble cottage. Then before their eyes, their cottage was metamorphosized into a temple dedicated to Hermes and Zeus, of which the couple were made the custodians. When asked by Hermes if he could grant Bacchus and Philemon a wish, the loving husband and wife asked for a moment to confer with one another. Their request was simple: to serve the gods for the remainder of their lives, and when the time came to leave this world, that they do so simultaneously to avoid suffering the loss of the other. Some years later, when the couple died as promised at the same time, Bacchus and Philemon were turned into an entwining pair of trees, an oak, symbol of justice and strength, and then a linden with its heart-shaped leaves. Oh, beautiful, 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 right? True success, right? True success. Having honored and offered hospitality and been recognized for the beauty in your hard work. Wow, that's a great one. Love it. Okay, the Seven of Discs, right? The Seven of Discs, failure. Oh, interesting. The Muses featuring Sappho, right? Failure usually is a distraction energy, right? We're moving out of that balanced energy of the six, and we're now juggling too many balls. We need help. We need focus. What do we got here? All right. Originally, there were three muses, but soon they tripled to nine. Sometimes they are referred to as water nymphs or primordial beings, but most traditions hold that the muses are the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, titan of memory. The muses are the source of the knowledge embodied in art. The artistry assigned to each of the nine muses is as follows: Calliope, epic poetry; Clio, history; Erato, love poetry; Euterpe, music and song; Melpomene, tragedy; Polhymnia, hymns and sacred poetry; Terpsichore, dance; Thalia, comedy; and Urania, astronomy. The name of the muses derives from the word musa, meaning simply art. The muses were responsible in spirit for all the arts, including sculpture, pottery, science, geography, mathematics, and philosophy. To the artist, the muses brought prosperity, friendship, and solace. To the art lover, they inspired and enjoined humanity to aspire. The Library of Alexandria and its coterie of scholars was known as the Museion, or Shrine to the Muses, from which derives the English word museum. Sappho was sometimes called the 10th Muse, a prolific Greek poet from the island of Lesbos. Sappho was famous as a lyric poet, best known in antiquity for her love poetry. Her work included themes of family, emotion, and religion. Little is known of Sappho's life, and although she was reported to have relations with men, she is most remembered symbolically for her love of women. Sappho became the subject of art herself, appearing frequently on vase paintings, on coins, and in Athenian comedies. At least 6 distinct plays bear the title Sappho. Patience is needed to be graced by the gift of the muses. The artist's relationship with the muse is a delicate one. The artist must wait for the muse to come to them rather than make demands of the muse. The artist must also be ready to recognize when the moment of inspiration arrives and be prepared to respond appropriately to when the muse appears. The muses demand of the artist a long-term approach to their vision, teaching that the fruits worth harvesting are those arrived at only after long hours of practice and nurturing, reflection, and cultivation, rather than those turned out without consideration solely for short-term gain. Humanity is the muse's instrument. They were often likened to bees, sometimes called the birds of the muses, which are primarily female and ruled by a queen. If one is bestowed with the gift of eloquence, they are said to be honey-tongued. Honey was used in ancient Greece to heal wounds and is said to be the perfect food because it never spoils. Similarly, art inspired by the muses has healing properties and can be passed down to succeeding generations. The proof of this is the Greek myths themselves, and ancient Greece is the cradle of Western civilization. This is why the mother of the muses is memory, gleaned from the past, and why the muses themselves are inspiration of the moment, so that the art they draw from inspire and may be for all ages. Okay. Right. So the is all about coming into focus, right? Coming into focus, coming into that hard working collaborative energy, doing what you need to do. Interesting. I like it. All right. We got the 8 of discs, prudence. Prudence. So let's see. Prudence. We have Hephaestus. Well, that makes perfect sense, right? God of fire, volcanoes, and metallurgy, right? Use your skill is the Delphic masculine. After being ejected from Olympus, Hephaestus spent most of his time either on or under the earth. As a result, he built a rapport with mortals and a solid connection to earthly reality. As the inventional of functional cunning and beautiful devices, he represents the creative artist and artisan, transforming intangible feeling and thoughts into the realm of concrete matter, right? And this card is all about that diligent hard work leads to creative empowerment, right? Beautiful stuff. Okay. So we got the 9 of discs, gain, material wealth. And we have Artemis, of course, right? Goddess of the hunt, of childbirth, of the wilds, of nature, the twin of Apollo, one of the most important goddesses. All right. What do they got to say here for the meaning? Artemis seduces through her unavailability. She is an anema figure, more collective than personal, representing as she does the female energy utterly separate from any man. Such an anema figure is what gives persons, events, and things their soul. Artemis is the other within everything, affording everything divinity. A rock, a tree, and a butterfly are shown to us to have a soul by Artemis, who herself is rarely seen, yet maintains the I and thou between ourselves and everything. Unlike Aphrodite, who merges all things and discloses their unity, Artemis respects everything for what it is and keeps them apart. Known as the goddess from afar, she maintains distance and discretion, not from without, but from within. Unlike other gods who reconnect one with who they were and so who they are, Artemis beckons one from the future to become who they are by being who they could be. Hers is the realm of sober and sobering respect, something in short supply these days. With Artemis, it is less that a violation of this respect incurs her wrath because it offends her, as it is she is offended by the violation of respect, since such a violation destroys each individual thing's dignity. By violating the divinity of dignity itself, some see her as cold and stern, yet she is what keeps the moon from crashing into the earth from being consumed by the sun, and electrons from colliding in their respective valence shells. Artemis is discipline, virtue, and radical solitude. She is the room in your house in a dream you know is there but never enter. The ability you have to fly, which you could do at any time if you choose, but somehow always forget. Wow. So, the empowered energy of the earth in its most abundant and fruitive and wild, Artemis. All right. Now we got the 10, right? Wealth, wealth, the completion of the cycle, accomplishment. Okay. The golden fleece. The golden fleece. Most people know the golden fleece is the goal and reward of Jason and the Argonauts, obtained with the help of Medea, but fewer people know of its origin. When the upstart mortal Ixion desired Hera, Zeus made a likeness of his wife from a cloud to trick the man. This cloud was called Nephele, and she married Athamas, the founder of Thessaly. They had 2 children, the boy Phrixus and the girl Helle. 10 years on, King Athamas tired of Nephele and took up with the younger Ino, daughter of Cadmus. When Nephele left in anger, she took all the clouds with her, and a drought came over the kingdom. Ino, jealous of Nephele and her children, seized on this and roasted all the seeds so they would not grow. She then bribed a nearby oracle to inform Athamas that the gods demanded the sacrifice of Phrixus and Helle to remove the famine. The night before their sacrifice, Nephele appeared as a spirit to her children and assured them she would not allow them to die, only they must have faith in her and not look down. Unsure of what she meant, but believing their mother, the children bravely faced their ritual slaughter. The next day, before all Thessaly, with Phrixus and Helle about to be sacrificed by their father, a golden ram appeared on the altar. The children climbed onto its back, and the golden ram flew into the air, shuttling themselves away to safety. When they were over the Dardanelles, young Helle disregarded what her mother had said about looking down, with the result that she fell into the strait of the Gallipoli and perished, the Hellespont now being named in her honor. Phrixus and the golden ram arrived in Colchis at the far eastern end of the Black Sea and were greeted warmly by its king Aeetes. Guided by the spirit of his mother, Phrixus sacrificed the golden ram to the gods and hung its golden fleece from an oak branch in a meadow of wheat, sacred to Ares. On the surface, the golden fleece symbolizes something of great value. The fact that it is gold suggests wealth, but the golden fleece has more to do with authority, delivery, security, and worth. It may be something nearly impossible to obtain or freely given. It is both divine and earthly. It may be passed down within a family or lost through a lack of inner faith regarding familial bonds. In more abstract terms, the golden fleece can symbolize the gifts of the gods, the heavenly blessing of rain, the bounty of grain, the union of sea and sun, and the golden elixir of the alchemists named the Philosopher's Stone. In an upright reading, this card represents the trust, security, and value of healthy family builds up around and within itself. In a reversed reading, the Ten of Stones often represents infighting between family members. This is illustrated in the Golden Fleece myth by Athamas' rejection of his wife Nephele and the willingness to kill his children. Helle's doubts about her mother's assurances, Medea's betrayal of her father and brother, Pelias' refusal to honor his vow to his nephew Jason, and Jason's subsequent betrayal of Medea. Ino's treachery and malevolence towards Phrixus and Helle is a clear variation of the wicked stepmother trope, a mainstay of folk tales. This convention reflects the Ten of Stones card's conventional aspects and suggests how humans can find in repetition and unchallenged agreements. Sadly, The abuse, and in some cases infantilism, of stepchildren is a long recognized reality, given the name, the Cinderella effect, by evolutionary psychology. The golden fleece represents a rich sanctuary for the inner child and the rich sanctuary of the inner child. The golden fleece is Jason's goal, the whole reason he and his Argonauts set sail. The real reasons are many, of course, but the fleece stands nevertheless as a symbol of those reasons, indeed, as a symbol of a goal, any goal, no matter what. As Jason's attainment of the fleece proves, achieving one's goal is only ever the halfway point. Wow, 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 wow. Completion, right? The golden fleece. You got the drug, you got the magic, you've got the symbol of authority. Can you now use it? Interesting. Okay, the mortal of stone, the princess of stone, Croesus, 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 right? The king of Lydia, right? Renowned for his immense wealth. Definitely makes sense for the king of stones, right? You know, very similar to the four of stones card. You know, both Midas and Croesus are very similar characters, right? Croesus is the guy who built the Temple of Delphi, by the way. Interesting. Okay, let's continue. Now we got Medusa as the daimon of stone, the prince of stone, the heir of earth, the divided youth. Oh, interesting. I can see that, Medusa. Interesting. Losing your head, right? The prince, the big issue with the prince is that he's not in himself. He's disconnected. He has all the skill and all this ability, but he's caught up in his imagination, unable to come into any sense of action, right? Divided amongst himself. Interesting. I can see that with Medea. Or sorry, with Medusa. 13. The godmother of stone, Europa. Interesting. Europa, right? She is the foundation of Europe, right? That great empowered queen. The water of earth here, right? Stepmother of the Minotaur. She married Asterius, right? Interesting. Brother of Cadmus. Okay. Oh, the king of discs. We got Idonius. 80s. 80s. The hidden ruler, right? Ebulius. Little can be said about Hades because there are no stories about him and few in which he features. Perhaps little can be known about Hades since, as king of the underworld, whose name means the unseen one, he is the god of the unknown, the elder brother of Zeus and Poseidon. The three drew lots to find which realm they would lord over, and taciturn Hades pulled the realm of the dead, now synonymous with his name. As ruler, Hades is not responsible for death, but for the souls who have already passed away. His epithets, Pluton, Lord of Many, and Polydectes, Host of All, indicate his dominion and generosity. His title, Plutus, God of Wealth, is due partly to the riches of the earth in which he dwells, from gemstones to precious metals, and in part from the million of souls in his possession. The main story concerning Hades is the Demeter-Persephone myth. Although both he and his wife, Persephone, are gods of fertility, the couple never had any children. Despite this, or perhaps for this reason, Hades and Persephone have the strongest and healthiest marriage of all the Greek gods. Some of the credit for their marital success can be ascribed to Hades' deference to his wife. Whenever Persephone is moved to help a mortal, be it Admetus or Alcestis or Orpheus and Eurydice, Hades obliges. No doubt his indulgence helps Persephone overlook her husband's humorlessness. Perhaps because they are hosts to myriad house guests, the couple never leave Hades. Before settling down, Hades proved himself a brave warrior during the Titanomachy. As a husband, however, he rarely, if ever, leaves home, refusing to budge even during the 10-year struggle his Olympian brothers and sisters had with Typhon. Interesting. All right. Well, that is it for the minor arcana. We've gone through the entire minor arcana of this beautiful deck. Well stuff. So far, really, really enjoying it. Lots to offer. Really beautiful deck and lots of deep mythological significance. Really, really, really impressed so far. Amazing. So now we're going to dive into the last part of the deck here. Okay. Which is the major arcana. The major arcana. So we're going to start out here, of course, with the Fool card. So this is right off the bat kind of an interesting choice to change up the Fool, because the Fool is already Dionysus in the classical tarot, right? So, but here, the Fool can be anyone who goes on that journey, so it certainly can be Odysseus. Let's see what they got to say here. So, for the Fool, Odysseus, know thyself. Odysseus is the eponymous hero of Homer's poem, The Odyssey, but he is also a central figure in Homer's The Iliad. In fact, Odysseus is in some ways the man most responsible for the Trojan War. It was Odysseus who devised the oath for Helen's suitors to swear to, and which, when she was abducted by Paris, all of Greece was obliged to uphold. Not a complete fool, Odysseus tried to evade the war with Troy by feigning madness, a role he was unable or unwilling to give himself to fully. During the 10-year war, Odysseus proved himself one of the most influential soldiers of either side. But it is his 10-year return trip home to Ithaca, described in the Odyssey, that makes him one of the most significant figures in Greek mythology. In his first post-Troy incident, Odysseus and his crew performed a prime raid on a Thracian town, wherein they sacked the city, slew the male inhabitants, and stole their women as sex slaves. This act of violence, greed, and flagrant disregard for arete, moral virtue, piqued the ire of Zeus. Despite Odysseus being the favorite of his daughter Athena, Zeus punished the marauders with a wild wind that blew Odysseus' ship for 9 days straight, far beyond the bounds of the known world. The first place Odysseus docked after the wind settled was the land of the Lotus Eaters, where he and his crew were overcome with forgetfulness, lethargy, and indifference. Breaking free of apathy, Odysseus unwittingly visited the land of the Cyclopses, where his crew stumbled upon a store of livestock, milk products, and fruits of Mother Nature. This is where Odysseus claimed to be Utis, nobody, an epithet of the fool. From here, Odysseus and his crew took refuge with Aeolus, the master of winds, before setting off again. Odysseus received Aeolus' gift of a cowhide containing all the winds save the western. With Ithaca in sight, Odysseus takes a quick nap, during which his men open the bag of wind, believing it to be full of gold. As a result, Odysseus and his crew are blown right back to Aeolus, who refuses to help them again. Deflated, the crew land on the island of Strygonians, a tribe of man-eating giants. Odysseus' ship is the only one to escape intact, and they make it to the island of Circe, Aea, where they nurse their wounds and mourn for their lost friends. After spending some years with Circe, Odysseus and his crew cross the sea again, this time under Circe's instruction. They skirt past the tempting lure of the sirens, evade the six-headed monster Scylla and the maelstrom Charybdis, and land on the island of Thrinacia. There, against the strict admonitions from Circe and Tiresias, Odysseus' men kill the sacred cattle of the sun god Helios. In retribution, Zeus sends a thunderstorm which wrecks Odysseus' boat and causes the death of all his crew. Odysseus washes up on the island of Ogygia, where he is nursed back to health by Calypso and ends up staying 7 years with the nymph. Setting out again, Odysseus washed up in the kingdom of the Phaeacians, who listen to his stories of monsters, maidens, war, and shipwrecks. Exhausted from his storytelling, Odysseus falls fast asleep, and the Phaeacians return him secretly to Ithaca. After being away from home for 20 years, Odysseus wakes up in his kingdom where over 100 suitors vie for his wife Penelope's hand in marriage, and where no one recognizes him. No one, that is, except his faithful dog, Argos. Wild stuff, right? Odysseus' circuitous journey home echoes the journey the fool makes through the tarot. The fool's route simultaneously illustrates two paths: the soul's experience out in the material world and the soul's discovery and exploration of self. Psychologically speaking, this journey marks the individual interface with the other and the ego's integration with the unconscious within the self. What in Jungian terms is known as individuation. The conspicuous encounters Odysseus has with outstanding female figures, Circe, Calypso, Nausicaa, are analogous to the ego's encounter with animus, figures on its route home to the personal unconscious and the integrated self. Penelope both symbolizes the goal and is the personification for Odysseus. At first glance, the choice of Odysseus for the fool may seem counterintuitive, seeing as his epithet was cunning, and he had the reputation for being the cleverest man in ancient Greece. But the etymology of the name Odysseus is obscure, but it may cognate with Olumi, to be lost. Having Odysseus represent the fool draws attention to the fact that no matter how intelligent and crafty a person may be, they are nevertheless fools, fodder for the whims of the gods, and fundamentally adrift in the fathomless world. Wow. Lots of stuff here, wildness. But let's keep going. We're going to check out the next of the major arcana. Next up, we're going to look at the magician, which of course is Hermes. Perfect connection, of course. God of boundaries, roads, travelers, thieves, athletes, shepherds, and sailors. Commerce, speed, cunning, wit, searches, sleep. Act without repenting. Hermes is one of the most important Olympian gods and one of the most dynamic. His father is Zeus and his mother is Maia, one of the seven Pleiades. He is the mother of the gods, or he is the messenger of the gods, and often acts as Zeus's go-between. As psychopomp, Hermes conducts the souls of the recently dead to the underworld. He has shamanic attributes, partakes in divination, magic, and initiation, and acts as an intermediary between different planes of existence. Hermes is the god imposed boundaries and the god who transcends boundaries. Right? Beautiful. The name Hermes derives from the Greek word herma, meaning a pile of stones. People walking in the countryside would place stones as markers. Later, a standing stone is a way of saying, "This is the way," or "I am here." People passing then often add a stone for good luck. Hence, a herm, a column with an erect phallus and Hermes' head on top, was placed at crossroads in ancient Greek. The Greek word new means to heap up. And so heaping up stones is to make new. From Stonehenge and cathedrals to city-states and civilization itself, through the placement of herms all around ancient Greece, Hermes became the god of good luck. Appropriate for a magician, Hermes often carries a wand, his caduceus. Entwining this rod in a double helix are two snakes. These two snakes represent the balance of opposing forces, such as between the male and the female, God and man, the ego and unconscious, life and death. With this caduceus, Hermes can heal people or induce sleep. This is why, along with the rod of Asclepius, Hermes' caduceus is the symbol of medicine. Right. God of wisdom and magic, of liminal space. Right, let's continue. So we got the high priestess, Persephone. Yeah, very perfect. Very perfect energy, of course. The Kori can easily be the high priestess, right? The high priestess is that initiatrix energy, you know? Beautiful stuff. We all know the story of the Kori, right? Beautiful. What do we see here? The Five of Wave cards concerns the Demeter-Persephone myth primarily from the standpoint of Demeter, whereas the focus of the two is Persephone, because she is queen of the underworld. Persephone's name was avoided by the Greeks. She is secret, hidden, ineffable, patron of things beyond and other, often referred to obliquely as dreaded. The other name used for Persephone is Kori, which translated as maiden, indicating the young aspect of the triune goddess and the primordial animating force of nature. As the core symbol of the Eleusinian mysteries, she is a mystery of mystery, the sacred core of the sacred cœur. Through the father, the daughter first becomes aware of herself as an individual. The symbol of this, the narcissus flower, is one of ego and sexuality. Furthering this idea are the pomegranate seeds, symbolic of the egg, the seed in the womb. Persephone's retreat for 1/4 of the year induces the female ebb and flow of life, seen in menstruation, the 9-month term of parturition, and reflected in the seasons and the phases of the moon. Although her story encompasses these aspects, she herself remains childless. Indeed, how could she give life being the queen of the dead? In a similar irony, although she inhabits Hades for only 1/4 of the year, in every known story involving catabasis into the underworld, Persephone is there. Wild stuff. Lots of this. Interesting, but let's keep going. Okay. The Empress, Hera, makes perfect sense, right? The queen of the gods, you know? And the Empress represents, of course, the 4 queens, the empowered feminine. I always like to view this energy, though, as Aphrodite Pandemos, right? Or Demeter, that earth power. But Hera works, especially if you're going to make Zeus the emperor, right? So let's see. What do we got to see here? Hera is Zeus's sister. When his advances were met with disdain, Zeus took the form of a distressed cuckoo, a bird notorious for kicking out its fledglings from the nest. Hera, taking pity on it, took the bird in her arms to nurture it, whereupon Zeus returned to normal form and ravished her. In this way, Hera was shamed into marriage with her philandering brother, becoming the queen of Olympus and its queen. Right? So this is where we get that whole cuckold thing, right? As a wedding present, Gaia created the famed garden of the Hesperides for Hera, where golden apples are protected by the serpent Ladon. It is said that Hera renews her virginity annually in a secret spring. As virgin, mother, and crone, Hera represents all women, right? As goddess of the holy bonds of matrimony, Hera was continuously betrayed and humiliated by her womanizing husband. Tired of his indiscretions, Hera vacated Mount Olympus and refused all of Zeus's entreaties. Knowing his wife couldn't refuse to attend a wedding, Zeus carved a female figure from wood, dressed it in white, and held a massive marriage ceremony. Hearing the news, an irate Hera crashed the wedding, attacking Zeus's would-be bride. Hera recognized the prank for what it was, and she and her husband were reunited. Wow, wow, wow. Lots of wild stories, right? Hera is the means lady, right? She's the female hero. It's a title. Juno, beautiful. She's the protector of the divine feminine. We see this, for example, in the Alexandra. It is said that only those who submit to Hera and demand and ask for forgiveness will be protected by decay, will be protected from decay, you know. Wild stuff. Okay, let's continue. So, of course, we're going to come up now to Zeus, right? Zeus, love him and hate him, that emperor energy, right? Wild, wild stuff. And we can all understand why Zeus represents the 4, that solidity, the empowered visionary, the empowered masculine, right? In all of its complexity. It's both the loving father and the tyrant, right? Wild stuff. Okay. So the Hierophant, which usually I would see as more Hera energy, right? Than the Empress. But that's just my personal, you know, the gods are so profound. They're so much more profound than the tarot. All of this works, right? But the 5 here, they got Tiresias, which makes perfect sense, right? Tiresias is the greatest sage, the one who metamorphosizes and becomes a woman and gives birth, lives as a man, lives as a mouse, right? Gives Odysseus all that empowered information from the underworld, the greatest of all of the Greek magicians. So it makes sense, right? The Hierophant is the inspired person. I would also could see the Hierophant as Homer. I often like to see the Hierophant as Homer, the one who takes that inspired wisdom, or Sappho, right? The inspired wisdom from the air into the earth. But beautiful, makes sense. Makes sense, Tiresias, right? Let's keep going. Okay. So for the sixth, the lovers card, what do we got for the lovers? The alchemical wedding. Aphrodite, Persephone, and Adonis. Ooh, all three of them. Right? And it's that cycle of death and rebirth and refinement, right? Aphrodite mourns for Adonis when he's killed by that bull, right? That's why we shave our heads. Oh, wow, wow. That's perfect for the lover's path. That is so perfect for the lover's path. Amazing. Let's read what they got to say here. Adonis was the son of Mira, who was cursed by Aphrodite to suffer an insatiable lust for her own father, King Cinyras of Cyprus. Each night, Cinyras drank himself into a stupor, which gave Mirha an idea. Wearing her servant's clothes, she entered her father's room as a concubine until she finally became pregnant. When Cinyras discovered the truth, he pulled out the sword to kill his daughter, but Hera, as Elethwea, the goddess of nurses and pregnant women, took pity on Mirha and turned her into a myrrh tree. From this tree, Adonis was born. Aphrodite placed the infant in a chest and took him to Persephone to raise in the safety of the underworld. When Adonis had grown, Aphrodite returned for him only to find he had become an incredibly handsome man. Aphrodite fell in love with him and wanted him for herself, but Persephone too had fallen in love with Adonis and wanted him for herself. Squabbling lasted for quite some time between the two goddesses before Zeus stepped in to resolve the dispute, decrying that Adonis would spend 1/3 of the year with Aphrodite and 1/3 of the year with Persephone, and 1/3 of the year as he himself chose. Adonis chose to spend this latter third above ground with Aphrodite, essentially because he was a hunter and so could spend most of his time with Aphrodite hunting in the hillsides of Greece. Adonis's androgynous beauty was appreciated by many, including Apollo, Heracles, and Dionysus, all of whom Adonis obliged. One day, however, Adonis was wounded by a wild boar during a hunt and bled to death in the arms of Aphrodite. On the spot where he perished, blood red anemones grew. Many say the death of Adonis was not an accident, with numerous covert motivations being proffered, including a jealous Ares who resented the attention Aphrodite lavished on Adonis, a vengeful Artemis in retaliation for the killing of the devotee Hippolytus, an angry Apollo punishing Aphrodite for blinding his son Eurythmius, a punitive Athena avenging Adonis's rape of her sibyl Eurynoma, and a greedy Persephone who wanted Adonis all to herself. In some versions of the myth, Adonis entered the underworld holding a golden bow, just as Aeneas had done, indicating that his stay in Hades was only to be temporary. Wow. That lover's path, right? That energy that calls us into refinement in order to come into that profound connection and unity. This is interesting, though, having the two women fight over that ideal. What do we got here for the meaning? Just as Demeter was not ready or willing to give up her daughter Persephone, to here Persephone in the mother role is not ready or willing to give up her surrogate son Adonis. This dynamic scene in the Tarot de Marseille lovers card represents the need in the child to move away from the parent toward their own intimate interpersonal relationship in order for their psyche to grow and individuate. Oh, that's beautiful. Now I see it. Leaving the mother and coming into the lover, moving from the underworld into one's own self, right? Chasing after the muse and coming into self-knowledge, which is ultimately what the lover's path is, right? That path of self-refinement, chasing after the muse and divine imitation until we become our true self and manifest our true will. Beautiful. All right, the 7, the Chariot. What do we got for the Chariot? Let's see. Looking like Apollo. All right. Oh, it's Phaeton. Phaeton. Beautiful. Act when you know. All right. Phaeton was the son of the sun god Helios and the Oceanid nymph Clymene, who raised the child on her own. As a boy, Phaeton was very sensitive and insecure about his absent father. When he told the other children that his father was none other than Helios, who drove his sun chariot every day across the sky, they teased him and mocked him mercilessly. Determined to find out for himself if what his mother told him was true, the adolescent Phaeton set out for the palace of the sun to confront Helios. Arriving at the radiant mansion in the middle of the night, Phaeton found Helios seated on his grand throne. Helios asked his son why he had come, and he replied, "To find out if you are truly my father, as my mother Clymene maintains." Helios laughed and, hugging his son, proclaimed, "She speaks the truth, and to prove it, you may ask of me anything, and I shall promise you shall have it." Phaeton did not reflect long, replying immediately, "The only thing I want is for just one day to take your place as the driver of your sun chariot across the sky." Helios instantly recognized his error, but it was too late. He had made a solemn promise. He tried to reason with the boy, explaining that only he among the gods was capable of driving the sun across the open sky. Not even Almighty Zeus could do it, let alone an inexperienced boy. But try as he might, Helios could not get Phaeton to change his mind, stubborn and fixated as he was to prove himself. And so in the end, Helios felt obliged to relent. Early the next morning, as dawn began to rise, the proud Phaeton stood at the helm of the sun chariot, holding the reins of the horses bridled to the car. Suddenly, without warning, they were off, and for a few ecstatic moments, Phaeton felt himself his father's son, lord of all the sky. No sooner had he experienced this elation, however, than the chariot began to swing wildly from side to side. The pace quickened, and Phaeton's mind began to race. The reins flew from his hands, and the horses, their own masters now, soared first up to the vault of the sky, then came careening down, scraping against the mountain ranges of the earth. Burnt by the sun, the ground caught fire and raged so that within minutes the whole world was ablaze. Phaeton, paralyzed with fear, was smothered in a cloud of thick black smoke and called out for help. In his torment and terror, he would have welcomed even death. Just then, Mother Gaia cried out in anguish, and Zeus, galvanized to action, hurled a thunderbolt out of control at the out of control chariot. The thunderbolt struck Phaeton dead, causing the frightened horses to take refuge near the sea. The burning Phaeton fell into the mysterious Eridanos River, where his sisters, the Heliades, came to mourn for their errant brother. Eventually, they turned into poplar trees on the riverbank, with the tears they shed turning into beautiful drops of amber. Wow, wow, wow. Right? Phaeton is a cautionary tale. Right? If you rise too high, try to be too great too quickly, you will be destroyed. You can't fall into that energy of hubris again, right? Wow, wow, wow. The chariot, right, is that self we wish to project, that energy that calls us into action, And in many ways, Phaeton is that idealized self trying to prove himself, the master of his father's will, right? That chariot energy on one hand is us rising to the occasion, but there's always that chance to fall into hubris and destruction. Oh, interesting. Interesting, interesting. I like it. Okay. So the 8, strength, right? In the classical tarot, this is usually either Heracles or Lady Babylon. But here we have Athena. Here we have Athena. That's the second time we've seen Athena in this tarot. She was also the ace of wind, which is quite interesting. So we all know Athena, born of the mind, but I guess the first one was parthenogenesis, right? Born of the mind, the ace. Now we're seeing here her in all of her glory, right? Wild, wild stuff. But Athena certainly works as the strength card, you know, that empowered feminine who's mastered both the craftsmanship and wisdom and the arts of war. Okay. All right. The 9, the Virgo. What do we got for the Virgo? Chiron. I guess Chiron's kind of a hermit. He's certainly the great teacher, right? The one who teaches us the magic and the skill, right? He teaches Asclepius how to do the surgery. He teaches Heracles how to be a warrior. I can see it making sense there. Though for me, I often see this energy as Psyche, right? The Virgo energy, or as Estrella. This is the energy of going through the cycles in order to rise to the heights of the ideal, to come into that power of refinement, to achieve true skill and mastery. So Chiron does represent that master, and he is that one who's on his own. So I can see it. Wouldn't be my choice, though, I guess. Let's see. The 10. Okay, and the 10, of course, would be Fortuna, Tai Chi, right? Normally. But here we have the Wheel of Fate is Oedipus. Well, Oedipus certainly makes sense for fate, right? And having to deal with the pressures of that cycle. Oh, man, someone cursed by fate. And that wheel, it comes to crush us all. We're all bound by that wheel. All we can do in the face of the wheel is try to rise to the occasion and hope that that keeps turning. And eventually we make it to the top. So Oedipus is perfect, I think, for the Wheel of Fate, a Fortuna. Let's see. The 11, right, which is Libra, Justice. The Oresteia. Okay, the Oresteia makes perfect sense. But that's also Athena energy again, because who is the bringer of justice in the Oresteia? It's Athena. But it also makes perfect sense, because Athena is the one who calms the Eumenides, who sets up the courts of law and brings us into real justice, gets us out of that tit for tat blood feud nonsense, right? So really, really beautiful. I like this. I like how much Athena we're seeing in this deck. Really powerful, beautiful. Oresteia. Wow. So Athena has been on 2 now of the major arcana and as the ace. Wow. So we got 12, the Hangman, Primordial Water, Dionysus. Makes sense. Dionysus is the dying and rising god, right? They represent the one that calls us into that magic of madness. But I see Dionysus more as the lover, as Bacchus in adoration of Venus, the lover's path. But I can see it here as the Hangman too, right? The Hangman is recognizing all about that we're not in flow, that we're not in harmony, that we need to change our course. To me, when I think of this energy, it always screams Odysseus, personally. Because, right, Odysseus, he screws up so many times committing piracy, and then he comes home after what? After climbing and putting himself on the mast and facing his greatest fears and listening to the feminine magic, the goddess Circe, right? But, the Hangman works as Dionysus for sure, because Dionysus is that ever evolving and refining energy, right? I can think of at least 4 different versions of Dionysus that occur in the ancient traditions, right? We have Dionysus, that is the ancient one, born in Bactria, right? Who establishes the first rites of how to make the wine. Then we have the second Dionysus, which is born in Egypt to Ammon, right? The child of Ammon. Then we have the third Dionysus, which is born in Arabia on Mount Nisa. Though sometimes people say Nisa is in India, but I trust the ancient Greek sources, like I believe it's Apollodorus who tells us that Nisa is in Arabia. But, we got the third one who's born in Arabia. Then we got the fourth one who's born in Colchis, right? There's all of these Dionysi, and it's always refining and coming in, right? You got Dionysus Zagreus, Dionysus Eubuleus, and Dionysus is intimately connected to Hades, Aidoneus, right? That hidden force, and to Ammon himself, that hidden force, right? So there's so much wildness going on with Dionysus, one of the most complicated of all of the divine figures for sure. one of the most obscured, because he was a feminine god. Even though he's a masculine deity, he was primarily, sorry, worshipped by women in secret rites. And so a lot of his information is lost to us, right? Outside of the more popular depictions and plays and such as frogs or the Bacchae. Wild stuff. Let's continue. All right. From the hangman, we come to death, right? Death. Who do we got? Thanatos. Makes sense. The daimon of peaceful death, that force that carries us into Hades, right? Or into Tartarus, right? Beautiful, beautiful. I would have, Thanos is always associated with the Morai and stuff. I would have probably chosen Hecate for the death card, you know, as the magic of the 13, as the crossroads. I mean, I guess Hecate could also be the moon. Hecate is such a profound character, so Thanatos works, makes perfect sense. 14, Temperance. Oh, that's interesting. Iris and Hermaphroditus, right? Oh, I like that. The art card, right? Which is all about coming into that true creation, creating that which is greater than the self, but also about healing the divine androgyne, becoming the gynomorph, right? Fusing the masculine, the feminine, and the animal, creating the holistic self, right? Through that power of art and the magic of Sagittarius. So yeah, Iris is perfect as that rainbow bridge, and Hermaphroditus is perfect as the uniting of the masculine and the feminine, right? Hermes and Aphrodite together. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Amazing. So 15, of course, is the devil card. Who's the devil card? Prometheus is the devil. I mean, Prometheus, yeah, he's kind of a devil character for sure. I can definitely see him being in that Lucifer type energy. I would have probably made Apollo be the devil personally before I would make it be Prometheus. Prometheus, I don't really like Prometheus anymore as a character after reading the Prometheia so much, and you find out that, yeah, he saves himself at the cost of the feminine, you know? Ugh, ugh. Anyway, let's keep going. Prometheus created mankind too, and his brother created all the animals, right? It was Zeus that then divided mankind and separated them and made them, something else. Prometheus tried to help mankind by giving them the gift of fire, and then he's punished again by Zeus. But remember, in the Prometheia, right, what happens? He hears of the prophecy of Themis, and he rats out to Zeus in order to get himself saved by Heracles. So ultimately, Prometheus isn't bound anymore. He's been set free, right? And he's been set free so that Zeus could prevent succession and maintain control, so that he could prevent Achilles from being born a god, right? Wow, wow, wow. So Prometheus is kind of a slimy, shady character, a creator and like all of the Greek gods, complicated at best, right? Neither good nor evil. All right. I guess a good devil card, right? I guess a good devil card in that sense. Neither good nor evil, right? The devil is all about forcing you to face yourself in the mirror and forcing you to take accountability for your actions. You have to best your limited self and rise above. Only then can you receive the keys. Only then can the devil lead you into that perfected middle path. But the devil wants to give you all the power. He wants to give you what you want. Can you listen? Can you recognize? Can you overcome your limits? Right? Let's see. All right. So after Prometheus for 16, ooh, that's a wild one. That's a wild one. Right? The Titanomachy, right? And the 16 is, of course, the tower, right? The tower is the force of Mars, the energy that comes to pull the rug out from under us, that forces us to move, that fire that upsets the stagnation and allows for new life new innovation and action to come in, right? So the Titanomachy makes sense, right? That war that leads to innovation and change and empowerment. On one hand, a true destructive force, a true sadness, but on the other, something that leads to true innovation and empowerment, right? True innovation and empowerment. Wild stuff. Okay, 17. 17, right? And the 17, of course, is the star Aquarius. And here we have the catasterism, the catasterism, right? This is the becoming a star. This is what the whole magical path is about. Oh, as if he chose that. That's interesting. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. What happens if you imitate the muse? What happens if you follow the golden tablets of Orpheus? Well, you leave this world behind and you rise to the stars. You achieve ionic life. That's where the ultimate wish leads you, to this energy of the catasterism. Oh, wow, that's amazing. I never would have thought of that. That's great. Oh, that's great. Okay. The moon. Who do we got as the moon? Hecate. Perfect. Hecate makes perfect sense as the moon. You could also put Selene. Hecate is more the noose of the moon, right? The moon in all of its phases. Whereas Selene is that titanic literal moon in our world, right? Where Hecate is the moon in all worlds. She is the mind of the moon, right? But the 18 is heavy energy. It's the energy that forces us to face the trauma, to face our unconscious, to confront our subconscious, those deep things hidden within and buried. Heavy stuff. But yeah, I would, Hecate or Selene are perfect for this energy. Either works. Either works. You know? Hecate and Selene are ultimately the same. You could even put Artemis there, no problem, right? Though Artemis is, kind of important beyond that, but All right, the 19, the sun. Who do we got as the sun? Maybe we're going to see Apollo here. Yeah, makes sense, Apollo. I would have put as the sun either the Cori, Plutus, or Eos. Because to me, the sun represents that true empowered fulfillment, the coming of the new dawn, the birth of new life, generation and growth. Apollo has those aspects, but to me, Apollo is far more the devil character, right? He's the one who calls us into true skill and mastery, who holds the keys to understanding and wants to reveal, which you have to follow. You have to come to virtue, right? But interesting, Apollo certainly works as a sun. He is the light of the sun, He is the sun at high noon, right? In its most empowered, perfected energy. All right. The 20, right? Which is the ion, judgment. What do we got here? The mysteries, Eleusinian, Dionysian, and Orphic. Oh, wow. All the mysteries combined into one. But this is what the judgment card really is. The ion, achieving ionic life, this is reinventing the self, coming into one's true self, going through the fire and setting oneself ablaze, rising to the stars. It's the energy of Astrea, becoming that empowered goddess, leaving this world behind, right? Definitely the mysteries. That's perfect. I love that. Right? The mysteries, recognizing the cycles and breaking free of the fear of death, right? True empowered ionic life. And now, of course, we got the universe, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. What do we have as that? Gaia. Yeah, Gaia makes perfect sense. I would have said Hestia, but ultimately Hestia and Gaia, Demeter are the same energy, right? So really, really interesting. Oh, wow. Oh, man. I am so impressed with this deck, guys. Okay. When I got this deck, I was a little skeptical just because I'm such a nerd for this stuff. But everything has been so well thought out. And even though I wouldn't necessarily make some of the choices that they made, all of their choices are well justified and make perfect sense within the magic of the tarot. So this is incredible, guys. I'm really, really impressed with this deck. So what we're going to do now that we've gone through a bunch of the book and we've checked out all of the cards, we're going to mix up this deck and do a couple magical readings. So if anyone is interested in me pulling them some cards from this beautiful Odyssean Tarot, send me a super chat, a super thanks, or sign up for a YouTube membership. So in order to get this underway, though, I'm going to have to give this a really, really good shuffle. So I'm going to take a couple minutes here to divide this deck back into four piles, and then we're going to shuffle all those 4 piles together, and then we're going to do a couple readings. Okay, so let's see. So first we'll give it a quick shuffle like this, and then we're going to split it into 4 piles, and then we'll go through and shuffle those piles together. This is something I love to do with every new deck that I get. This ensures that you're putting your hands on every single one of the cards and you're imparting your personal energy. It's just a personal preference, but it also ensures that the deck gets really, 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 really thoroughly shuffled. So we're just going to split everything up into 4 piles. Doesn't need to be exact or anything. And I'm just going to stand up here so it's easier because it's going to take me a minute. But let me know what you guys have thought so far about this Odyssean Tarot, and what you think about the correspondences in the various myths and deities and other figures that have been used. I'm really, really thoroughly impressed with every aspect of this deck. The art, the quality of the cards, the quality of the box, the incredible book, the level and detail in which it is written, the sources that are provided. This particular character, Chris Leech, really did his work in this deck, you know? And while there are some subtle differences, if I was making my own deck, I would choose. Ultimately, everything he's chosen has been well justified and works within both the Greco-Roman mythology and within the tarot itself, you know? And I have to be honest, with a lot of tarot decks, especially modern decks, a lot of decks are kind of just haphazardly thrown together. You know, something like Greek myth is so popular and it's all open source. So people can easily just throw a bunch of this stuff together, slap some pictures together and say they made something. That is not what you're getting here. This is the real deal, something really, really well thought out and put together. And I know I'm going to love this deck for years to come. So a big shout out to the anonymous donor who gave me this particular deck. Just wonderful. And I'm excited too to check out the Oracle deck that came with it as well, the Delphi Oracle. And that's what I'm going to do tomorrow, is we're going to unbox that particular deck. You know, everything about it is just really high quality too. All the cards are really, really nice. They're good laminated, you know, nothing feels cheap. The book itself is a little bit, you know, you can tell that it's made by an independent small publisher, but it's still better than a lot of the stuff you see nowadays from Amazon. You know, quality production of books has really gone down. But what I am impressed with that book, not so much in its quality of production, but within its content, right? The content of that book, the writing is really, really well done. All of the myths are really well explained. You're getting so much information. I mean, I do think he's missing some of the more tarot specific stuff, but you know, this is a mythology deck. You come to this deck for the myth, and that's what he gives you, you know? So really, really interesting. Beautiful stuff. Okay. So let's see here. We're going to do, as our first reading for this deck, we're going to do a 9-card Saturn Square reading. And for these readings, these communal readings, remember to take what resonates, to discard what does not, and to trust your own personal intuition above all else. So let us invoke Apollo and the Muses and ask them to shine their light upon us, to guide us throughout our days, and to help us to realize the beauty of our dreams. So Apollo and the Muses, what is the empowering and inspiring message from the Odyssean Tarot by Chris Leech? All right. We'll cut it here into see what our center image is. Let's see. Okay. So we got the Ace of Discs. The Ace of Discs. Wild energy, right? Opportunities abound, new experiences. Remember, with the Ace of Discs, it always implies the totality of the cycle. So, this is something that's coming into our purview that could lead us into wealth and abundance and a true accomplishment. But we have to be willing to take the opportunity, be willing to move and act upon this. And powerful energy to have in our center. All right. And we've got the Chariot, the 7, Phaeton, right? And the energy of the Chariot, right, is all about donning our armor, standing up for what we love, being willing to pursue our passions, to do what is necessary. And that's what we're seeing here, right? In order to fulfill this energy of the Ace, we have to be in that empowered action energy, the magic of Cancer. And we have to pursue this, be willing to move and to be willing to do what is necessary. Wow. And we got the Tower. Yeah. Oh, man. The Tower. Some intense Mars energy there, right? The Tower, there's no avoiding the Tower, right? You got to deal with it, right? Now, you can jump out of the way, but you've got to face the Tower energy head on. When this energy is here, Mars has come to force you to act, and you must act, right? So, what we're seeing is there's a collapse, but there's a potential for new growth, new rebirth. We have to defend ourselves and be willing to pick up the pieces. We have to go through this transitionary moment and come into new opportunity. Remember that magic of Mars, right? It upsets the old growth, it burns shit down, but out of that fire comes the new life, the fresh shoots, new opportunity. And all this energy burns down is that which no longer serves, that which is stagnant, that can't continue. So, this energy is breaking us out of stagnation and calling us into opportunity, right? It will be painful. That's why we have to don our armor and we have to be willing to act. But ultimately, it will be profoundly rewarding. For the Ace has that infinite potential. This could take us to the 9, the magic of gain. This could take us to the 10, to profound accomplishment. Oh, wow. And we got the Ace of Cups, Aphrodite. Not only are we seeing the opportunity, for incredible growth in the earth, for movement and work, we're seeing the opportunity for new love, right? The Ace of Cups represents friendship, empowered connections, new true potential, right? Really, really, really beautiful energy. So, what I'm seeing here is if we can be in that pursuit of love, following our passions, standing up for what we believe in, being willing to fight, then we could overcome this tower and come into real, true expansive energy. Wow. Serious opportunity. Okay. The 14. We got the King of Wands, right? The fire of fire, Aries. Look at all this fire energy. We are being called at this moment to really empower ourselves in our passions. The muse is saying, if you wish to pursue these, you got to be in yourself. The fire of fire is that mature person who knows who they are and what they want and is out to get it. They're not out to harm anyone. They're in that true mature perspective. This is the person who's determined to be in their own fulfillment and they recognize it. Really, really passionate energy. And they're coming into these new opportunities. But to do it, they have to face this struggle here. All right. And we got the 5 of air, right? The 5 of winds, right? The 5 of swords. Intense energy, the 5, right? Or is sorry, that's the Hierophant, sorry. The Hierophant, yeah. I'm still trying to recognize all the borders and stuff with this deck. So bear with me, first reading, right? So the 5 is the Hierophant, right? That's the energy of Tiresias. And this is beautiful. Venus in Taurus. Wow, look what we're seeing. We're being called to become the Hierophant, the inspired creative, right? The true magus, the one who shares their knowledge and manifests community and culture, who brings us into that true, empowered, inspired artistic creation. Wow, wow, wow. When we can be in our true passion, when we can pursue these opportunities, it takes us into this profound energy of the Hierophant. that inspired creative. Wow, that's so beautiful. Okay. And we've got the 7 of air. The 7 of air, the 7 of winds, right? Which is, of course, futility. Futility. Wow. You know, the only thing that's holding us back with all of this is our mind. We keep falling into this frustrated energy where we believe that we can't. You know, if you're in that energy of self-doubt, of frustration, of self-aggrandizement, then you can't come into that true harmony, right? We need to recognize that it is our mind that is playing tricks on us. It's our mind that's denying us from coming into that hierophantic energy, from donning the armor and doing what it takes to overcome that collapse, right? The collapse is only as heavy as you allow it to be. Wow. Let's see. Yeah, look at this. The reality is there's profound opportunity. We got the 8 of Wands, the magic of Hermes, Pegasus, profound opportunities coming in, but we got to recognize the sign and take the leap. Look, love and abundance are our purview. If we can just take that leap after it, if we can trust our intuition and go for it, it'll carry you into that opportunistic energy to become the Hierophant, to seek that inspiration. Wild, wild stuff, right? Again, all that's holding us back is that fear. We got to don our armor and face our fear. These two 7s parallel each other in energy, right? Oh man, and a third 7. Look at this. The 7 of Wands, Valor, Perseus, right? Staying focused and true to your will, doing whatever it takes. Man, yeah, look at this. The Tower is here and it's painful, but what is it doing? It's calling us into our profound will. It's calling us to take responsibility and to pursue these opportunities, to become the high priest, to break free of a limited past, to come into real opportunity, to break out of our fearful mind. Really, really, yeah. Kirasor, the golden sword, who is both a man and a sword. Gotta love the myths, right? So wild. But yeah, Pegasus, right? Pegasus, who is the steed of Bellerophon. Remember, right? Bellerophon can do no wrong. He is the greatest hero the Greek world ever sees. And it is only until he says that he is greater than Zeus that he fails. Because what happens? Zeus comes and spooks Pegasus. And that greatest of weapons becomes the greatest of, you know, of distractions and throws poor Bellerophon. And what happens to Bellerophon after he gets thrown? He breaks himself, he breaks his body, and he's forced to wander the world in shame and disgrace. Hubris yet again, right? But this is a powerful read ultimately, guys. What I'm seeing here is there's real potential, real opportunity, but we're going to have to don our armor and pursue it. We're going to have to pass through the intensity of the Tower and learn to become the Hierophant, that true, inspired, wise person who can take that creativity and cultivate it in the earth, right? And it's going to take us breaking free of self-doubt and futility and coming into our own valorous focus. But if we can be in those energies, then we can recognize the signs and come into these profound opportunities, new love and growth. And the aces always imply the totality of the cycle, right? These are real opportunities for love and expansion. Take the leap, pursue your ideals, be that fiery king, and become the Hierophant. That's the message. All right. Peace and love. I hope that resonated with you guys. All right. So, with that, we're going to do a couple donations here. So, first up, I want to give a special donation to my dear friend Astro Ascension. I accidentally missed Astro Ascension the other day. So, they recently updated StreamYard, and for whatever reason, it hasn't been saving the super chats for me. So it used to save all the super chats at the top, and now it doesn't. So if I don't pay close attention, it's easy for me to miss them. So I apologize if I ever miss anyone's super chats, and you can always let me know if I did, and I will give you a reading whenever I can, or I'm happy to send you a refund. But yeah, let's pull a couple cards for Astro Ascension here. And make sure you go check out their channel. They do regular tarot streams all the time from a Hellenic perspective. Really beautiful stuff. All right. So let us invoke Apollo and the Muses and ask them to shine their light upon Astro, to guide them throughout their day and to help them to realize the beauty of their dreams. So Apollo and the Muses, what's the message for Astro Ascension? All right, let's take a look. Oh, right, Gandhi, back before, yeah, Ray at the beginning. I remember that too. I appreciated you back then. Okay, oof. So Astro, you've got the tower, right? The tower, the force of Mars. So this means you're going through a really intense moment, right? That energy of Mars is so painful on one hand, but it's also so empowering and innovative, right? This energy upsets the old growth and allows for new opportunity, right? So while it's going to suck. It's not easy. This energy, though, carries us into what we need. It's the energy that allows new life to take root, that, that maintains the cycles, right? Oh, wow. What's it calling you into? It's calling you into the Lover's card, the 6, the Lover's path, the alchemical wedding, profound commitment. So what are we seeing here is that this energy is going to challenge you, right? The Lover's card is all about recognizing the muse and committing to her, going through the process of divine imitation, rising to the heights of the ideal, becoming Attis, chasing after Cybele, Bacchus after Dionysus. Or sorry, yeah, no, Dionysus after Aphrodite. Oh, and look at that. We got the 13, the Queen of Discs. So this energy could be the one you're called to connect to with that lover's path, or this could be the energy that you're called to be in, right? The Queen of Discs is beautiful. My favorite of the queens. She is the water of earth, Mary Poppins, the one who pushes everyone around her, who ensures that the people she loves are taken care of, but she also brings out the best in them. Hera energy in many ways, right? Really profound magic here. But you're being called to be in this energy of building and constructing, overcoming that collapse of the tower, and in this commitment. Yeah, I'm getting this profound sense that it's you who is being called to be the Queen of Discs right now. You need to be in this building mode, being in this shared energy, working in the water and in the earth in order to overcome the intensity of this moment. You know, this energy of the tower is never easy, and it does take a rebuilding. It does take a coming into commitment. That's what we're seeing. This tower is forcing us into that true action, to make those commitments that'll lead us down the path that we need to go. Recognize the lovers, right? Is that energy that carries you to the highest muse, that'll carry you to the heights, right? But you got to make that commitment. Powerful stuff. Powerful, powerful stuff. Wow. All right. That's the message, Astro. I hope that resonated with you. And thank you so much for your support. Much love, my dear friend. Okay. All right. And we got another donation here. So thank you. Really appreciate you, Tengu Rossi. All right. So let's see. We'll give you another reading here. And we invoke Apollo and the Muses and ask them to shine their light upon Tengu, to guide them throughout their day and to help them to realize the beauty of their dreams. So Apollo and the Muses, what is the message for Tengu? Inspire. All right, you got the 9, the Virgo, Chiron, right? The energy of the Virgo is all about the hermit, right? It's all about doing the hard work of developing true skill, going through that process of self-refinement, facing ourselves in the mirror and taking accountability for our actions, recognizing our limited perspective, our limited forms of behavior. It's all about trying to figure out how you can improve, how you can come into your true self, what needs to change, and how you can bring about said change. Okay, the 6 of Wands, victory, victory, coming into profound reality, the perfected middle path, right? This is the energy of living our true will. And what are we seeing here is when you can take accountability and face yourself in the mirror, do that disciplined work, sit in meditation, listen to the muse, and actively change. That's when you find yourself coming into true empowered fulfillment. The only thing that's holding you back from facing reality and being in yourself is this energy. There needs to be a refining. There needs to be a coming into one's true self and the taking of accountability. You know, often when the Virgo is here, it's because we're in distracted mode, not focused, not empowered, not doing what we need to do to be in that true lover's path. But if you walk this energy with that clarity of focus and determination, it'll carry you to the heights of the ideal. It'll bring you into your true will. Yeah, look at that. We got the Seven of Discs, failure, the muses, right? In this particular deck. And this energy is all about coming into profound focus and learning to do the hard work that is needed, right? The energy of the Seven of Discs says, why am I failing? I'm failing because I am not inspired. I'm not empowered. I'm not focused. I'm not projecting. I'm allowing myself to be overwhelmed. So this energy is all about bringing that into focus, right? You have that profound, hardworking, focused, analytical mind of the Virgo, of the Hermit, right? Utilize this energy to bring you into that greater clarity, to do the work that is necessary to carry you into that perfected middle path. There's all this profound opportunity here, right? There's all of this ability to recognize who you are and what you want and to come into real creative empowerment. But to do that, we need refinement. Why is the seven here? Why am I in that failure energy? Why am I distracted and not focused, right? How do I enact my true will? How do I come into harmony? How do I live in reality? That's what this energy is all about. That Virgo is about refining yourself so that you can come into reality and be in your most creative mode. Live in your will, pursuing your dreams, and being active, being creative, manifesting. This is a lot of power and potential here. You just need to take responsibility and face yourself in the mirror. Do that disciplined work and ask yourself, how do I manifest my will? How do I pursue my truest desire? How do I come into focus, creative work, right? There are things that are holding you back. And the Virgo, though, is the power to change this, to refine your practice, to refine your life. The Virgo takes account and she changes. She actively changes. So this is about disciplined action and accountability. But if you can do that, look, the six of victory is so profound. You're in total harmony with the self, living in your will, fulfilled. You're on that true cusp. You just got to do the work and the focus, refine yourself and take accountability, right? The only issue here is not asking for help and not being focused. Ask for help, bring in the focus, and victory is your reward. That's the message. All right. All the love in the world to you, Tengu. Really, really appreciate you. So awesome. Thank you, guys. All right, everyone. Well, with that, oh man, triumph against all odds. I love that. Hupomeno, right? I will endure. That is the magic of the strength card, Lady Babylon. That is the magic of Medea. That is the power of the divine feminine in general. DK endures. That Circe energy, she endures. She is infinite and unchanging in a world where everything else changes, right? Wild. All right, everyone. Well, I think we're going to call it an evening here. I've been going for 3 hours. We dove deep in the Odyssean Tarot. I hope you guys all appreciated it. Let me know what you think of this beautiful, beautiful deck. And make sure you go support the creator, Chris. What was his name again? Chris. Where did I put the book? I just saw the book. Uh-huh. Here we go. So the author's name was Chris. created by Chris Leech. So make sure you support Chris Leech, and you can pick up this tarot deck from Welkin Tarot, right? They have a deal right now where you can get this particular deck, the incredible Odyssean Tarot book, which is where the real freaking wealth is. And you get the Delphian Oracle, which I'm going to dive into tomorrow. And we're going to do another beautiful unboxing, and we'll explore that incredible deck. And if it's anything like this particular deck, I know we're going to love it. Really impressed with Chris Leech. Truly, truly amazing work. So everyone, please go support Welkin Tarot, Chris Leech, and the Odyssean Tarot. Truly, truly impressed. Really excited to work with this deck. Right? Welkin Tarot. They even sent me a little card. Beautiful. All right. Thank you guys. Much love. And I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning for our morning adoration, and in the evening when we dive deep into the Delphian Tarot. Until then, peace and love, and take care.